What is your financial net worth?
My financial net worth as declared in my documentation is 400, and let me get the exact amount so that we don't have to 400, I think 498. I'll just clarify that very quickly.
Speak closer to the mic.
I'll do that, yeah. Chairman, my financial network, as have declared in item number 25 in the criteria for vetting and approval, is 482,200,000.
Tabulated as?
Tabulated as farms in Olengurwane, Kipsonoi, a house in Spring Valley at 95. My current residence, some rental property in Westlands in Matundu, valued at 50 million, vehicles, bank account, and investment in a family tea value addition business called Chebango EPZ Tea Company at 185 million, a total of 482,200, Chairman.
Right. Are those your current sources of income?
Yeah.
What are your anticipated sources of income?
My anticipated source of income accruing to about 12 million shillings annually, coming from salaries, farm, and rental, Chairman.
Thank you. I'll now avail you your under 10 minutes to tell this committee the journey of your life.
Mr. Chairman, let me confirm again that I'm Davis Kimutai Chirchir, born some 62 years ago in a village in Kericho called Cheptigit, but soon migrated to Bomet. It was the larger Kericho district those days, where we've settled to date. I went to local primary schools in Bomet, specifically today Sotik constituency, in a village called Kipketi, and progressed through my primary education, joined Kericho High School between 1974 to 1978, Form 6, 1979 and 80, and I joined university in 1981 to do a course in physics and computer science. I graduated in 1985 and joined the then Kenya Post and Telecommunication Corporation, where I went for what was called traffic engineering course to be able to handle management of traffic engineering in telecommunication for 9 months at the now Kenya Multimedia University, then Central Training School. I worked and rose through the ranks to be the general manager in charge of information technology and change management, where I served for 10 years between the year 1993 to the year 2003. I left Telecom briefly as change manager, chairman. I handled the liberalization and the opening up of the telecom market.
Mr. Chirchir, the Hansard reporters say try to move closer to the mic.
It's too tall.
But you can raise it, can't you?
As general manager, Mr. Speaker, in telecom...
Just hold on. Is that any better? Okay.
As general manager in Telecom Kenya, chairman, at the advent of the world liberalization in telecommunications, I participated and worked closely with the management in government to draft legislations, having done a lot of work on the legislative changes that were happening worldwide because of the changes in telecommunication, and basically got the communication.
Unity Homes invites you to our open week from the 15th to the 23rd of October at Tatu City off Thika Superhighway. Come view our vast array of high-quality projects nestled in the upcoming controlled Tatu City, ranging from 1, 2, 3 and 4 bedroom apartments offering an ultra-modern, all-inclusive lifestyle for all. See you there. Book your unit today by calling us on 0701 550 550.
Two main classes of headaches are what we call the primary headaches and the secondary headaches. Primary headaches being headaches which don't have any other reason behind the headaches. The headaches which usually begin early in the patient's years of life, for instance 20 years, 30 years, and they can go on up to 40 years of age. But for women, especially around the menopausal period, you can actually get some problems with some of the primary headaches. Now, secondary headaches are headaches which have something that can be causing the headaches. And the commonest causes are things like if you have a brain growth, a tumor, or if you have an abnormal blood vessel, which for instance has ruptured, or patients who present with stroke, or even infections like meningitis, which I think most of the public know about. So basically, secondary headaches have a cause that can be attributed to the headaches, which should actually be discovered, diagnosed, and treated. If you have 4 to 5 headache episodes in a month, you count headache days. If I get a headache today for 1 hour, that's a headache day. If I get a headache tomorrow lasting 4 hours, that's a headache day. So depending on how many headache days you have, if there are 4 or 5, we actually instruct patients to use analgesics, which are painkillers. Now, if your headaches become a bit more frequent, for instance, they are not trickling over to 7 to 10 headache days, you now really need to stop the painkillers and you need to see a specialist. Reason being, if you use too many analgesics, you develop another headache called a medication overuse headache. So you find that with time, the painkillers, they don't really help you. In fact, they predispose you to getting rebound headaches. So you take analgesics, within a few hours the headaches are back. That's already a red flag. So you need to see a headache specialist and you'll be put on a different kind of medication called a preventive therapy. So these are drugs that you take now every single day for about 6 to 8 months, and the headache intensity should reduce, and with time we are actually able to wean you off the medication.
Authority legislation at that time that became the regulator and got Telecom Kenya to operate under the Companies Act, while Postal Corporation did operate, of course, under the Postal Corporation of Kenya Act. It is then that we're able to license and give, because up to then telecommunication or postal service was a monopoly and a preserve of the government under the then Act, I think it was Cap 411 of the laws of Kenya, now repealed. And that's when we then brought in Safaricom, Celtel at that time, that have revolutionized the way we do business in this country and given us an edge over other African countries, because I think the legislation was properly done. I say so because just a few weeks ago, our neighbors like Ethiopia are only giving out a second mobile telecoms license, giving out an M-Pesa license to facilitate movement of cash and bankability of the unbanked people in the local communities. In 2007, I was out of telecom or out of public sector for a while, and I joined and spent more time in managing family business. In my documentation, I've also shown that we run a business called Bon Voyage Limited, which is a telecommunication company that supports Safaricom in a number of areas. And so I ran that company until 2007, when after the challenges of elections of 2007, I applied, because of the challenges we all faced in 2007, to really be part of the solution in reforming the electoral process in Kenya. I was taken in as a commissioner in the Interim Electoral Commission, where I served as a commissioner, and looking at the reform requirements to institutionalize good practices in elections as recommended by the people who came to assist us, including Joan Krigler, a judge, a renowned judge from South Africa. I was able to work there for 3 years, and we then established some of the great solutions we use today to manage our elections in this country. Upon the expiry of the term of the Interim Electoral Commission, I was sourced by one political party, then United Republican Party, to be the Secretary General, where I worked in that party, and having formed a coalition with the then TNA party, we were able to form government, and I was appointed as Cabinet Secretary for Energy and Petroleum. I served in that office for 2.5 years, and Speaker sir, in the Excellency State of the Nation address of Thursday, 26th March 2015, my name was among the 175 names that were tabled in Parliament on allegations that I was not aware of, and I wrote to the President as he had basically requested those who had been mentioned to step aside. So I wrote to step aside to allow investigations to take place in line with Chapter 6 and the other clauses requiring integrity of an office such as the one I hold. In one paragraph, I did say, Chairman, in a public office, one must be worthy of the trust of those who place their trust on them. Accountability and integrity is of paramount importance in the public office, particularly the office such as the one I hold, and you have graciously appointed to, I've been graciously appointed to, and which I hold in trust of the citizens of Kenya. I therefore, Chairman, step aside to allow for investigations to be carried, and upon conclusion, the specific issue here that was of concern was what was eventually coined as the Chicken Gate scandal, which was a collision, or a claim of a collision between the commission at that time, the staff of the commission, and maybe the commissioners, to get kickbacks to award a contract for printing of ballot papers to a company called Smith and Husman of the UK. I think I should state at this point that the investigations were completed, and I did manage to get documentation to prove that those who were found culpable were charged, and I was not one of them, Mr. Chairman. In 2007, because of my performance in every area of my works, I was still sourced to support Jubilee Party, and I was eventually the presidential chief agent in managing the elections of 2007, and Jubilee emerged the winner of that election. I would want to claim that because of really the fact that
07 or 2017?
2017, sorry, Chairman, 2017, and we did emerge winners in that election. And after that, I still continued to run the businesses I ran until 2022, when I was appointed to be the Chief of Staff in the office of the then Deputy President, now His Excellency the President of the Republic of Kenya. That is the long and the short story of Chirchir. I've worked with most members of Parliament in my small stint of a bit of political life, and therefore most of the members I see in the House are not new to me. And thank you, Speaker.
Chirchir, I open the forum to members to ask you questions. They could be followed by one or two clarifications where necessary. But like I said, decorum of the highest level is expected. And I'll start with the Deputy Speaker.
Mr. Davis Chirchir, first I want to congratulate you for your nomination for appointment as Cabinet Secretary for Energy and Petroleum. I think through the Chair and Honorable Chair, I would like to make a declaration of interest under Order 90 of having known Davis Chirchir personally. I've worked with him at the Electoral Commission. I've worked with him also in the political formation of Kenya Kwanza and as agents of the presidential candidate then. But I want to confirm that in no way, Honorable Chairperson, will my personal knowledge of him affect my judgment or will make me get engaged in any bias as we go through this vetting process. And with that, let's seek your permission to proceed to ask the question. Okay. Mr. Davis Chirchir, I want to ask you questions that Kenyans are asking. That's what I've been doing throughout this process. Things that matter to Kenyans. Kenyans are asking, the cost of electricity is one of the highest in the region, and this affects the cost of production, hence the cost of many of the basic commodities that are required by wananchi. It's also said that the high cost of electricity is because of the loop-sided contracts between KPLC and independent power producers. Yet, despite the fact that Kenya is endowed with wind, solar, and geothermal renewable energy resources, so the question Kenyans will want to hear from you is, what steps will you take should you be approved as Cabinet Secretary for Energy and Petroleum to ensure that you mitigate and deal with these challenges that are facing Kenyans? Thank you.
Davis, you'll have to hold. We'll do batches of 4 questions. Then you come to answer all of them together. So you can indicate as we go along. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Chair. Davis, you've alluded to the so-called chicken gate scandal that made you step aside in the year, was it 2015 or 2014, thereabout, and investigations that followed. Would you be privy to the outcome of those investigations? What became of those investigations now that you are not reappointed to cabinet in 2017, as much as it was the prerogative of Uhuru Kenyatta to appoint or not to appoint you, but you went ahead to be appointed as Chief of Staff in the office of the Deputy President this year? Is that to mean nothing came of the investigations, or what was the issue? Two, if you are approved, and you had begun some very good work with the last mile program, the first term of the Jubilee administration. But as the Honorable Sholai says, Kenyans are really concerned on the performance today of our power generation, the power transmission companies, especially KPLC. Hundreds of thousands of Kenyans today are connected to power. Some consuming that power and not paying for it because KPLC is unable to provide them with meters. Many others have applied for a connection of power, but they cannot get connected, again on the excuse that there are no meters, and contractors have dropped lines into their houses. They have not gotten the lines into the KPLC system. What would you do immediately get into office to fix some of those systemic problems that are there at KPLC, to make both connection, transmission connection, and billing of power in this country a little bit more efficient? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chirchir, unlike some of my colleagues, personally I haven't had a chance to interact with you or to work with you previously. This could be the first engagement I'm having with you at a close range. That notwithstanding, of course, there are certain things which are not adding up. And why do I say so? Just to pick from where Honorable Chunga has left, you've indicated that you stepped aside, or you are forced to step aside. Because I was in the House then, 2015, when the President came to Parliament and read the names of those who had fallen short of the requirements of Chapter 6 of the Constitution. And therefore you are forced by circumstances to step aside. And you say investigations were conducted. I'm not sure if you are aware when they were concluded. But that notwithstanding, from your own submission, you said that you then participated actively in the campaigns of 2017, and your coalition won. Isn't it curious, then, that from 2015 to 2022, you are essentially out of public service. And yet, your coalition won in 2017. And the President, of course, is the appointing authority. He could have the reason why he didn't appoint you. But I'm sure you could have been curious enough to find out from the President or whoever it was why you are not featuring among the appointees, having worked so hard to deliver the victory, and also having been cleared, if at all you are cleared by the investigation. So secondly, until you came, of course, on board much later in 2022 as a chief of staff in the office of the Deputy President, at the tail end of the term of the government. But that is very curious. Two is, I'm sure you are aware, because it's in public domain, that executives of Smith and Usman were eventually tried, convicted, and indeed jailed in the UK. Two of them, a man and his son, for having bribed the interim electoral commission officials with 50 million Kenya shillings. So the bribers were convicted and jailed. So those who were bribed have to date remained scot-free, if you may ask me. And to Kenyans, of course, you are one of the suspects, because it was in public domain. So you may need to update us again as a committee what you could be knowing as far as the outcome of these investigations are concerned, and if at all any action has been taken against any person that was involved in this scandal on the Kenyan side. On the Kenyan side. Because as Honorable Nyet said earlier on, the requirements of the Constitution at Chapter 6 are so stringent, yes, that any slight indication, any slight suspicion that you are not having a proper integrity could bring a lot of question marks in Kenyans' minds. So, kindly help us understand.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Junet.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, mine is brief. I wanted to ask the nominee that if you look, even though you are out of office by then, but the last 5 years, the places where there have been many cases relating to corruption, even though now we can tell them they are politically instigated, but let's say politically instigated corruption, let me use it for the good of it, that word, were majorly in the energy sector. If you look at Kenya Power, if you look at Kenya Pipeline, if you look at this, what is your view? Because that must be the thing that is making the cost of living, that must be the thing that is making the cost of electricity very high in this country. What do you think you'll do differently? Because you left office in 2015, Then another CS came in. He looked like he continued with the trend that could have made the cost of electricity and the cost of energy very high in this country. What is your view? Is there corruption in the energy sector, or it is as clean as a snow and all those cases were politically instigated?
Davis, you can answer those four.
Thank you, Chairman, and for those four questions, I'll run through them, starting with the Mheshimiwa Gladys Shole, on the cost of electricity and whether the contracts are lopsided. Having served as CS Energy and Petroleum, I can say with some level of authority, I understand the sector and the challenges which basically afflict this particular industry. Electricity in Kenya is predominantly generated from hydro, about 30%, running down Kindaruma all the way to Kitaru, the cascaded water dams out there, the Tana Delta. And that's about 30%. We've since developed geothermal, and glad for the House or the members of this committee to know geothermal. Kenya is quite a significant player in the geothermal industry, whereas we have about another 800 megawatts of geothermal. We are actually the 6th largest geothermal user worldwide because of the technology and the knowledge, the support of government and parliament in investing in geothermal development. We then have today quite a bit of wind coming out of Loengalani, and solar from Garissa, and the small solars all over the place, totaling to about 3,000 megawatts. The challenge that maybe what I've not mentioned is the heavy fuel generators, which also amounts to about 600 megawatts, which were brought in to mitigate the challenge of drought sometimes in the 90s. They were basically meant, they are quick to deploy, and so when you have a problem, you bring in an Agreco, it comes in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It is meant to mitigate a drought challenge, but they've become a permanent feature in the generation of power to our grid. Diesel generation is very expensive. If you look at, I think I tried to tabulate somewhere, from hydro today, we generate power and put it on the grid at about between 3 to 4 cents US. Geothermal is at about 7 cents US, and so is solar. The earlier signed solar were at about 12 cents, but since then, the devices have really come down, and the price of solar today, we could even get it for 5 cents US, 6 cents US, and so on and so forth. To compare with the thermal generators, we are talking about 20, 22, 23 cents US. It is 4 or 5 times as expensive, but they have since become feature of our generation matrix, and they dispatch almost on full time because of the challenges of global warming and weather. When the water is low, you have to supplement using the diesel generators. There is something called intermittency in solar, in the green energy, solar or wind. There is so much wind at night, and there isn't much during the day. So we have so much power at night when we don't need power, and during the day there is solar, and we are able to use it because it's available during the days when our industries are running, but at night the power is absolutely not there. So when you look at the effective matrix, what you will call energy matrix, and though we are at 3,000, you could actually say if the intermittent power was not there, in solar, in wind, the diesel generators become a permanent feature that must dispatch for us to run our economy. So whereas other economies like Ethiopia are running their energy to power their factories at 4 cents US, 5 cents US on solar and so on and so forth. We are running our energy supply to our industries at 22, 23 cents US. When you load the cost of transmission, which is more on the Kenya Power side, O&M, and the challenges of what you would call customer challenges and the weak network, you are talking about running our economy sometimes at up to 30 cents US, which is not really sustainable. We cannot, so we must then go back to the drawing board and ask ourselves, even with the 3,000 megawatts today, and Kenya Power or the technical people will tell you the peak time consumption today is at about 2,100 megawatts. You basically are saying if 2,100 megawatts is being deployed to the grid at night when there is no solar, then you must support the grid with diesel generation, which is meant to be really used to support the power shortage, and more particularly peaking. There's something called peaking during around 7 o'clock when we all switch on our powers in our homes and industries are still running. The requirement suddenly goes up and you need these diesel generators to peak and basically support the grid. So there's a challenge that we must then all go back to the drawing board and ask ourselves, how are we going to fix this challenge? And it is not something that you fix overnight, because power generation is something that if we start today giving out a license through a PPA, by the time we dispatch power out of that project, it will probably be 4 or 5 years. So there are no quick fixes. We must do proper planning. We must get the correct power mix and ensure that we feed our power to the grid at the right cost. Leave the diesel generators to support peaking and for emergency use only. But to almost have them as a permanent feature is really something that cannot be sustained, and it is killing our industries, it is killing our economy. It's a big challenge. It's also not good for the environment, because we are burning fossil fuel, and in terms of the emission, carbon emission, and the ratification we've made in terms of reducing the global warming to, I think it was first in Paris, and then Glasgow, and now Egypt next month, we must reduce the use of fossil fuel. So whereas it's a very expensive form of energy, and it's closing our industry, it's also causing serious environmental challenge that you members may be aware that even the laws, the current drought that caused us to lose over 3 million animals in most of the semi-arid, arid and semi-arid part of the country is part of this global warming. So really, we need to sit down and address the concern of the cost of electricity. We need to generate more from geothermal, where we have a lot of resource. We are told we have up to 10,000 megawatts. And I think we are experts today in development of geothermal, given the fact that Kenyan personnel are currently assisting Ethiopia to develop geothermal. When we are buying 400 megawatts from Ethiopia, we should possibly be spending that resource to develop our own resource. So, Chairman, we'll need to sit down with the technical people at the energy bodies, Kenyan, GDC, and really retrace where we have gone wrong, relook at how to improve on the matrix, power matrix, reliability of transmission network, so that we don't have this intermittency of power dropping and messing up equipment in industry. We must look at the cost structure of the power that we supply to the users, because it's one thing also to generate and load so much cost because of our inefficiencies in the way we work in Kenya Power, in REA, or GDC for that matter. So there is work to be done, Chairman, on the challenge of cost of electricity. And then to basically summarize on the cost of electricity, as a student, I didn't mention that I did a master's in international management. And in strategic management, in one course, you get the global farms. Global farms are farms who manufacture out of their home countries because of the advantages they draw from cost of manufacturing. Out of UK today, the cost of labor is so expensive. Japan, cost is expensive. Germany, the cost of doing everything is expensive. So they relocate to places like China, Ethiopia, Kenya, because of the cost of doing business. If then our cost of doing business starting from power or human resource is high, we miss that opportunity. Global firms look for least cost countries, countries who offer competitive advantage through power. That's why we are doing the SEZs and so on and so forth. So it's one thing that we must address quickly and put Kenya where it belongs in the state of nations. So those are some of the steps we need to look at. I think it's teamwork. We need to bring everybody on the table. One question which I asked myself when I was nominated for this position is really how do I navigate this challenge, and more particularly the fact that everybody, Chair, in the energy sector, when you see the mission and vision, the mission particularly of all these organizations, Geothermal Developing Company, Kenya Power, they talk about competitive price power. But do we really mean, do we understand, are we competitive? Competitive against who? When we are a monopoly. We should be competitive against the world prices of delivering power to the grid to be able to attract some of these global firms. So, Chair, I am up to the task. I'm aware of the challenge, and we need to address it to basically put Kenya where it ought to be. Mheshimiwa Chungwa, Anthony, am I privy to the outcome of the investigation on Chicken Gate? For a long time, I assumed that the file had been closed, and I was correct, but I didn't have any documentation until when I was invited for vetting, and there was one affidavit done by the CEO for the Transparency International. She's called, I think I have the document here. She's Sheila Masinde. And Sheila Masinde did an affidavit, and basically the clerk to the National Assembly, Sarah Kioko, called me, and I picked a copy of it. And I learned that my name had been mentioned in respect to Chicken Gate. I went to my lawyer and asked them to confirm whether the file had been closed, because investigations had been, in my own understanding, had been finished. Those who were found culpable had been taken to court and charged. And I've got a letter done to the clerk of the National Assembly, which is basically absolving me of any liability in terms of those who were found culpable. And I do expect that the clerk should have put that in the file, Mr. Chairman, to clarify and close this issue once for all. So I've done also a sworn affidavit to confirm and respond to the affidavit of Sheila Masinde to that extent. So that, whereas I assume that had been closed, at least I was actually happy for a moment that we do this confirmation hearing, because it gives us the opportunity to check our past, confirm our tax compliance.
We can't see the letter he's referring to.
You have a copy of that letter?
I have a copy of that letter, Chairman.
Share with us through the clerk. But I saw it at clerk's office.
That's the letter. So, Chairman, I've done that. I did leave 2 copies with the clerk yesterday, because I just did get the affidavit on Saturday evening. So, Chairman, I do expect that, whereas I assume that the case had been closed.
Chair, on a point of order, maybe just in the interest of saving time for the committee, the clerk's office should supply such documents and circulate them. Because if we had them, there was even no need then of, probably no need of asking the question if there's already something.
And I already gave instructions that any document received from the nominee or any of the government agencies or any affidavits, adverse or otherwise, should be circulated to members in good time. So going forward, Florence, arrange to do that, especially for the remaining nominees.
So, Chairman, I then did an affidavit to respond to Sheila Masinde, and I did forward yesterday. But for a moment, I was a bit disappointed because my name and my character was put to question for several years through a document that was placed before Parliament, and I would expect that Parliament should protect its citizens so that we do not work down careers of serious citizens in this country when people make allegations. But I was also quite happy that the Approval Act of Parliament does require that submissions of any adverse concern about anybody be done through an affidavit, a sworn affidavit, so that we do not have claims and mischief of people trying to pull out down people's characters. So in terms of the vetting process, I think it was well thought out that, Chairman, we do require that we do sworn affidavits, and so that the face of the person complaining and not unnecessarily pulling somebody's character and career down is able also to stick out and say, I want to stand against an integrity issue, and therefore be able to corroborate what exactly the challenge is. As regard the concern of generation and transmission, which was raised by, again, Mheshimiwa Anthony Chungwa, it's cross-cutting from what Mheshimiwa Gladys Boshole did ask, and I think I've touched on that question, but let me just go into one area of why I think we really need to address the power sector, the cost of energy in this country. There's been for a while, I think because of the monopoly of Kenya Power, or what would actually, I think the Energy Act 2019 has addressed that monopoly to some extent. It's just implementation. But to a very good extent, the customer service, which is really more of a big challenge that we need to address, because we look at customers, and a customer is a person who buys and buys again. They are not buyers. We really are permanently with Kenya Power and Lighting, and we need to have a relationship with Kenya Power in terms of understanding. Even the bill is so complicated. We need to really understand and improve the customer service and customer relationships. In my MBA course, Chairman, I did put deliberately a document on one of my term papers. One of my term papers, Chairman, in my MBA is a case of a company which was in medical insurance called CRM Implementation Failure at Cigna Corporation, which when I review today tells the story about our energy sector in terms of failure to recognize customer relationship and more dealing with being just transactional basis. And I would like to encourage members to look at that term paper. It almost reflects how we behave in the energy sector to our customers, how when our numbers the bottom line numbers are not adding up, we push it to the customer instead of mapping out change strategy to address
that is
those
very
concerns.
Good. Tell the committee what we are going to do to stop this.
It's one of my first assignment, Chairman, to basically look at the cost structure of our parastatals. I think we generate power, for example, at $4, $5 on the renewable energy, and when we give it to Kenya Power to distribute, they distributed another 4 to 5 cents. It's not acceptable. And so we must look at our distribution cost to to be able to bring down the cost of power. We must look at the strength of the network in a very structured way. We must decouple. I think what we did sometimes was the generator is Kengen, the transmission is Kentraco, the off-taker is Kenya Power. But if you seriously look at how you operate today, sometimes NREA does the social obligation of doing the last mile and the providing power to our homes. When you look at the decoupling of services between Kenya Power and REA, I think REA today is called REREC, Rural Electrification and Renewable Energy Corporation. You cannot draw a clear line on who does what. Kenya Power tend to do more of social work, which cannot really, as a commercial entity, the social work should be done by REA, and which is funded by government. So we don't fund REA, and yet the work is being done by Kenya Power, and then they owe one another. When you look at GDC, GDC was supposed to be de-risking the fields for geothermal development. Building power generations today, which is the space for coupling and understanding the role of one body against another body. If Mheshimiwa Hussein wants to pull some power in Pokot South to some end, it is the role of REREC to do that, not Kenya Power, as a social obligation. And we will bring budget to the House to support that, to ensure that the last mile is fully covered, and not use a commercial entity like Kenya Power, who then loads the losses to the customers in the commercial sectors, and we end up losing our serious businessmen because of cross-subsidy. The subsidy should be left and be done within the social context of REREC, and we leave Kenya Power to do the more commercial work as an off-taker, pay Kengen what is due to the generators and the PPPs. I'm told today Kengen is owed, and the other PPPs are owed over 23 billion because of failure of Kenya Power to pay. So, Chairman, there is work to be done. We're going to do it, and I understand that space to a very good extent.
Davis, we are not doing very well on time.
Let me
we'll spend about 30 minutes,
I think,
on two questions.
Chairman, I've answered to a very good extent Mr. Wandai's question of
Chicken Gate.
the Chicken Gate. And I think the only challenge is really, yes, it was in the public domain. I do also expect that my members of parliament to defend me to some very good extent, so that I should not have been out for several years on an allegation and a file that had been closed. So, and you owe me for not, it came to the House should have, not just for Chirchir, the House should really protect Kenyans so that we don't trample on people's careers.
Mr. Speaker, just a point of order. Mr. Speaker, you know, Mr. Chirchir is making very serious allegations that I should have helped him to get back to the cabinet, when you know very well that the coalition that formed the government was not my coalition. Really.
Chair, I think with your permission, the nominee might not be very wrong, because he is aware that eventually the person who had asked the CS to step aside, President Uhuru Kenyatta, ended up being a leader in the party that Honorable Pio Wandai is now leader of.
You didn't have to coast our side.
Yeah.
You know, our side is it's angry.
With your permission,
yes.
It's only that we want to stay with the decorum as you ordered. Yes. I almost veered off to election rigging and other issues. I just left. I told Ushunga I'm not going there.
Can we have the next batch? Owen, Robert, Rugara, and Koech. Davis and honorable members, we are doing very poor on time. Now, please ask precise questions. Let's get precise answers.
Okay.
Yes.
Chair, thank you very much, Davis Chirchir. I would like to ask you a question on in terms of power use, electricity, and the productivity of water. That the tariff used for producing water using electricity is higher than that of street lights, and areas like at the coast where you have to pump water up, and other areas in this country where you have to pump water that goes up to homes, the cost of production is very high, such that water companies in those areas cannot break even because they spend more money to pay for electricity than for the water. And yet, the policy at the ministry has not changed in many years, and that people are suffering, that there's a lot of power disconnection in waterworks by KPLC because they are demanding that they be paid the commercial tariff. And yet you find that streetlights have a special tariff. It's very low. What are you going to do about this to ensure that we say water is life, water is the engine of all productivity in this country, and actually there's a correlation between poverty and water? How are you going to assist the other ministry to ensure that we have water and there's no interruption?
Robert Mbui.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Chair, I want to refer the committee to page 5 on the documents presented for this nominee, on the part where we are talking about sources of income, and he's indicated his income of 2021 and also 2022. I want to refer to the 2022 income. Now, he's indicated that on number 5 that he worked in the office of the Deputy President as Chief of Staff in the year 2022. And earned a whopping 18,448,000 shillings. Chair, my question is, assuming he started working on the 1st January, which is actually a holiday, then had to stop working on the 9th of August because that was the election date, then it means that he was earning on average 2,527,000 shillings per month. Now my question is it the official public wage bill that has been approved by SRC for the office of the Chief of Staff of the Deputy President, considering that the Deputy President's own salary is only 1.2 million per month?
Thank you, Chairman. Nominee, after water in life, electricity is next. So the ministry being vetted for is one of the most important in the country, especially to the rural persons who are yet to see electricity. The unit for measuring supply of connectivity of electricity in the country are constituencies. And the problem we have is the disparity between some constituencies and others, such that I talk about my own constituency, which in 2017 was at 9.5% connectivity. In spite of every work I did in 5 years, we were able to move it up to a maximum of 30%. There are other constituencies, and I have data of that, who are now at 100%. My question to you is this: what are you going to do to reduce or remove the disparity between constituencies, whether rural or urban, as far as electricity supply is concerned? Because Kenyans out there are now waiting to be connected to the national grid.
Honorable Koech.
Waziri, mine will be in Kenya Power. Actually, the story of the energy sector starts and ends with Kenya Power and Lightning. In fact, nowadays in Kenya, there's a famous quote, kwamba when it rains, saile sisi tunatoa nguo, Kenya Power pia inaanua wire. Power just goes off. It is something that you must find a way of fixing. And it goes beyond policies. There must be a deliberate, I think there's a deliberate attempt by some officers in Kenya Power to allow connection of power. That is why they visit your house on a Friday, disconnect power so that they get something, and then again when you reconnect, is when they can restore the supply. Number two is on revenue collection by Kenya Power and meter reading. You find Kenya Power staff having to dodge vicious dogs in people's compounds, yet you can actually use technology to do meter reading and give estimates on what should be built. Thank you.
Davis, can the answers be as brief as the questions?
I'll be brief, Chairman. Income, Chairman, as I declared, is accurate. In 2022, I earned 3 million between January and March from my previous sources, as indicated from 2021. And when I came to the office of the Deputy President as Chief of Staff, I've earned salaries for 5-6 months at a taxed net amount of about 764. I have been able to utilize a facility called a car grant, which is 10 million, which is available to that office as per the public service laid out regulations. And when you break down that 18 million, I did my arithmetic and it's accurate, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we have a GAG grant for the job group that I hold in the office up to now. Chairman, George Murugara disparity should be a thing of the past. As soon as George, you clear me, I'll address your constituency. But more importantly, Chairman, that's on a lighter note. The progression on really rural electrification was utilizing the laid out network and maximizing the use of transformers in terms of connectivity. And it progressively went into most of the rural areas at about 70–80% today. When we do sit down to do the budget to address the constituencies where this disparity exists, and when we do get the approval of the House on that social expense to ensure that we power our homes, we should be able to move quickly from 30% to 70%, and maybe on the second year to 100%, for not just for George's constituency, but for all the other constituencies which have not been powered. But Mheshimiwa Nelson Koech, power goes off because our networks are very weak. When it rains, sometimes we have not maintained the networks and the trees come down on power lines. Some of the posts are rotten and we really need to upgrade our network. So we'll again be sitting down with the entities, particularly Kenya Power and REA, to address the strengthening of the network so that every time there is wind before the rain, the network doesn't come down. We need a strong transmission and distribution network. We also, towards the strengthening of the network, need to address the vulnerability of abuse of the network by those guys who trade in scrap metal. But more importantly, we need to strengthen our network and address that challenge. Revenue, I'm told we are looking at today, most countries are looking at smart meters. We don't need anybody to come to your house to read the meters. In fact, smart meters, like I said, I'm in the T sector chair, and our meters are read automatically, not because somebody has come, but remotely. So we can be able to, and we should be able to address that, Mheshimiwa Nelson Koech, as soon as I come in and we sit down with the team. Thank you.
Thank you, Davis. Now give to, yes, Owen.
The question on water, Owen Baya, Mheshimiwa, is something that is very interesting. Even as we talk to the cost of power, we'll need, water is a very interesting source of energy because there's something called potential energy. When something is up, when it comes down, the energy, it releases energy. So we'll be seeking to use storage technologies to be able to improve the power in our network or in our system and we can be able to pump water back to the dam using energy at night when we don't need energy out of wind or solar during the day, so that we can reuse that water. The challenge of maybe harmonizing the sector is work very closely with Warma to ensure that we do cooperate and see the meeting points on how much we should pay for the water we use to generate power, so that the water then given to the people.
Chairman, I think he didn't catch my question. That's why he skipped it. I asked why is the tariff of water higher than any other thing, especially when you're producing. You have waterworks in Sabaki. Kenya Power disconnects water because the water providers cannot meet the cost of production. When are we looking at a reduction of water production tariff in terms of electricity?
Owen, let me understand that question properly, because
is asking,
yes,
that power cost to water service providers is high. Isn't that so? Yeah. Yes. Why is it so high? Is it high relative to other consumers?
Correct.
Chairman, the tariffing structure of Kenya Power, you could have seen something called C1, C2 to C15. And pumping of water using the pumps is quite a heavy consumer of power. What I've not mentioned is, you may not be aware that even as power is expensive to our homes, we only charge 7 cents US on what we call lifeline tariff to over 70% of our home users. So the biggest challenge we have in the power sector is those people you're talking about who are pumping water are subsidizing the social users of power who consume 1 to 100 kilowatts per month, and because of the economic status, we basically have this very dirty kind of subsidy program where we are using the economic drivers, the companies who are supposed to be driving the economy, to supplement the social service. So we need to look at that. Most of with the water, with the solar panels coming down today significantly, and the off-grid that we are developing to ensure that we do hold captive most of our customers, I want to believe that we'll be looking at a policy where we can put solar on most of the water pumping stations and reduce the cost of pumping significantly by whatever, maybe even over 50%. Because solar costs today, and being off-grid, there will be no transmission losses. Thank you, Chairman. I hope. Yeah.
Daud Amisi Raso Maisula. I'll come to you.
Thank you, Chair.
Ask
Speaker.
One question each. We are doing badly on time.
Thank you, Chair, Speaker. The nominee, Mr. Davis, you are aware we talk about petroleum and fuel products, the expenses and all that. What do you have once you come in? There was a time my ex-governor Kiraito Murungi, when he was the Minister for Petroleum, they had explored oil in Turkana, and that oil was supposed to go all the way to Lamu, maybe because we did not have a refinery. Is there a plan still that we are going to prospect for oil? And is there a plan for the refinery, which was closed down in Mombasa, to be revamped and work so that we can reduce the price of fuel? So those are 3 questions in one, regarding fuel prices together with the refinery and exploration of oil, because otherwise we are not going to get cheap oil, and fuel will be expensive. So will you be even looking at reducing the price, I mean the excise duty and the duties on fuel, to reduce the prices of fuel by more than 40 or 50%? Thank you, Chair.
Amisi, one question.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
Yeah. Over the past recent times, Kenyans have complained of the electricity bills and meter readings capriciously going higher than normal. And especially the Kenyans who don't have much consumption in terms of electricity. They have no machinery, they have no bakery, they have no factory, but the electricity is just all of a sudden. They are not normal. It happened during your reign. I think it has persistently continued. Although you left ceremoniously, you've explained the circumstances, but we still believe that this is an insider job. There are officers within who collude and they intentionally overprice Kenyans, and you end up paying a bill that is not yours. Now, you didn't do anything while you were there. You are still heading to the same place. You know, God performed miracles through Elijah. One of them was bringing fire down from sky and entering heaven by fire. So I don't know whether these miracles are going to happen in your reign.
Next, Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chirchir, I come from Marsabit. That is where you find Lake Turkana wind power, where you evacuate considerable energy all to Suswa. So my question is, what is it that you are likely to do so that the people of Marsabit will actually not be using generators when you are evacuating that considerable amount of power from their area, and yet they are not directly benefiting from that?
Thank you. One question, Naisola.
Thank you very much. And to the nominee, I want to ask this question, and I need a very simple answer. You know, like you're just talking to a normal hustler. To understand the whole issue on the price of fuel. We know that when fuel goes up, life becomes even hard for Kenyans. And the whole essence of, you're told by Friday, fuel will come down by 1 shilling. So what is this? You know, Kenyans ask these questions and no one really answers it. And also the question on fuel subsidy and, really so that we can understand as hustlers the importance of removing fuel subsidy, but how do you cushion us at the moment?
Four.
Mheshimiwa Daud, from on the petroleum and the Lokicha oil that was discovered sometimes, and where are we today? I did my homework, and the petroleum sector is at a phase called field development phase. This is the phase when their Talo and consortium have submitted a report to the Ministry of Energy. That report is currently sitting with the regulatory body, EPRA, Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Body. The report will be handed over to the Minister or the CS for Energy, and in line with the Petroleum Act, it should not be in that office for more than 30 days. It will then come to Parliament, and the Act also stipulates that it should not be in Parliament for more than 90 days. For purposes of the commerciality, the economy of pulling out the oil, and the report does say we can be able to do up to 120 million. There is a figure that let me not misquote because I'm talking to the whole world. 120 kilo barrels per day, which when you convert at about 160 liters to the barrel is significant, and that can address the challenge in the country. But that's slightly on the longer term. We will work together to expedite and make sure we don't work with 30 days, we don't work with 90 days, and therefore be able to tell the prospecting company to quickly get down and start pulling out the product. And that might give us the security of the challenge we are currently facing. If I combine this with Mheshimiwa Lesuda's question, because they are basically cutting across on the same petroleum area, with the price of fuel, it's a world phenomenon. The challenges of Ukraine and Russia, and the US and Canada refusing to buy, putting embargo against buying that product, created the supply-demand challenge. And we may not be aware, but if we read, we know that the fuel prices in the UK, in Canada, in Singapore, are running at, I was reading, Singapore is going at $9 to the liter. When I converted, that's about 300 shillings to the liter. We don't think this Ukraine-Russia challenge will be forever, but certainly we need to mitigate and address our challenge. And I think it's an opportunity to think out of the box and ask ourselves, how can we be self-reliant? And that's why I was saying, let me cut across with Dawood's question in terms of developing quickly what is ours, so that we are not over-reliant on the other economies out there. And while reading that, I found a quote by Joe Biden that said, when we are out of this challenge, we'll be stronger, and the world will be stronger and less reliant on fossil fuel. But when I paraphrase that, as a country, we really need to work on our geothermal, being an equatorial country, work on our solar, work on storage of power, so that we go into more of the electric cars with the conversion kits being fairly cheap today. So yes, it's a concern, it's a global challenge, and yet we think we are going to come out of it more stronger, Mheshimiwa Lesuda. Refinery, Bwana Hamisi was sitting somewhere over there. We need to work on, I don't know whether it's a miracle, but I mean, there's no reason why anybody should pay for what they have not used. And as we work to introduce the intelligent or whatever meters, we really also need to think out of the box on how Kenya Power trades. Think about how Safaricom trades. They give you a zone to manage, and you can buy power in bulk, and you prepay. For those of us who work for Safaricom, Safaricom is not owed any money. You prepay airtime and distribute. Collect the money, prepay, you collect more. There is no reason why Kenya Power cannot adopt those kind of simple frameworks of a region being given to a manager, or rather a business person. You buy in bulk at a discount, you make your little money, and you manage your customers. So certainly we'll be working together to look at how to re-engineer the traditional way of handling customers from Kenya Power, bringing in the smart meters, and working with everybody to ensure that we don't just pay what we have not spent and which is going into people's pockets. We will be able to do that. Raso, Marsabit, I passionately loved that county when we were developing the wind power projects. There is no reason why the developer on the project, you know, when you develop 400 megawatts, there is the power which is retained to manage the equipment. And that power should have really looked at the community of interest. We need to sit down and look at using the power that, when you develop 400, we are possibly retain 20 for the use to manage the equipment, because they need power to basically support the operations within the site. And it shouldn't be asking for too much, because I think the power we need within the community will not be more than 3, 4, 5 megawatts. And therefore we need to revisit, and under the act where the resource sharing of local resources with the community, the county and the national government, we should see how to support the community around Marsabit, so that we do not just evacuate power the way we evacuate water out of Muranga, and the locals just see the power going out of their county, and they don't benefit. So we can look at that. Naisul, I think I did combine your question with Daud. Thank you, Chairman.
Chair, my question has not been answered about the refinery.
Let me take up that very quickly.
Question.
The refinery.
Take another round after that.
The refinery, Chairman, was closed during my time because we were supporting the refinery through importation of crude, which was then refined and on what we called a yield shift. You bring a crude and you need to produce so much of AGO, you need to produce so much of PMS, and many times our refinery, because it was a very old technology, was not meeting the requirements of the yield shift. So there was a shift from the planned to what was produced, and we were making so much losses. The second challenge was the fuel coming out was not clean. If you drove a diesel engine those days, it kept going down every so often because the particles, degree of particles in terms of what is approved to be clean fuel was not. So we had to shut it down. We either had to upgrade or to shut it down. Improving it was as more expensive as buying a new one. So we shut it down. The tank farm is huge. I think the tank farm is being used today for holding fuel, but we need to see how to utilize it better for use of strategic reserves, so that at times like now, when we're having serious challenges with Ukraine and Russia, we should be having some strategic reserves under the NOC 30% framework that allows us to hold strategic reserves of fuel. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Posing, Shuria, Ferdinand, Mishi.
I thank you, Honorable Chair.
One question each.
Yes.
Very strict.
And you have really balanced today. People who started early, you give them the last, and then the last, you give them the first. I think you are a very good speaker today. I thank you. Now, to the nominee. No, it's
today
true.
only or always?
It's the truth. It's fair. Now the nominee, Chirchir. There is this problem, which is an example of many other towns in Kapenguria, which is getting really unclean power. Almost every day, bar blackouts. There are many towns like that, Honorable Chair, in this country. But I think Kapenguria receives one of the uncleanest power in the whole world. You cannot even predict to do anything, Chair. We did, as leadership of West Pokot, at a particular moment, we presented our issues to the late Kibaki, during Kibaki government. And what he did was to recommend the evacuation of power from Takwel. You know, Speaker, we have Takwel, which is generating power in West Pokot. So when somebody talks about unclean power, you don't understand. So that government proposed that we evacuate high power, build a substation in Ortum so that we can develop the factory, which is now about like 40% being done, and then to Kitale, so that Kitale and West Pokot can share that power, which is clean power. And Ketrag Honorable Chair did only power lines. And from that time, that's almost 15 years. Up to now, Chair, the power lines are there, Waziri, nominee, they are there. What will you do because those are low-hanging fruits for your action. Would you promise, if this House agrees with the, or approves you, would you say that that will be your 100-day expectation that you light up that line so that the people of West Pokot and Trans Nzoia can be able to get clean power? They have been suffering since independence.
Thank you,
I thank you.
Sharia.
Thank you, Chair. And when a nominee, as you consider the issue of Marsabit, also consider the issue of Balambala, where you are getting your solar power. Since you also seem not to be getting power, and we give the nation about 53 kilowatts through solar. My question is a very simple one. Do you have any plans to improve the strategic petroleum reserve in the country to caution Kenyans against future fuel shortages? Thank you, Chair.
Jukaria.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I wanted to ask this aspect of capacity charge, and that is the animal in the energy sector. But at the same time also, Chair, I have another one on NOC, the National Oil Corporation. Chair, I would want to ask the nominee to address us on the capacity charge for the PPS. And on NOC, Honourable Chair, you know, the fuel prices in this country, the international strategic reserves for the internationally recognized is around 90 days. And here I think is only 7 days. And it is very dangerous. Yet we don't fund NOC substantially for it to be able to undertake its mandate. So NOC was just reduced to start producing actually distribution of gas, which is something else that also needs to be addressed in this country. Because if we don't then take that aspect of a position of funding NOC, then forever we will be in these problems of high prices and things like that. But most importantly is the gas aspect again, which we don't have. It is being controlled by private people, including NOC buying gas from a private person to sell to Kenyans. And it was very strategic when we started the Mwananchi gas that was meant to reduce the forest problems. And all of a sudden again, the former finance person just decided to put taxes on the gas again, and everybody is back on the wood and timber and charcoal. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Chair. So many questions have already been asked, but I have just few of them, like 2. Okay, Chair.
Yes.
I will abide by the norms. I think there is a need to have...
Please switch off your mic.
Oh, sorry.
To the nominee, my question is, what plans do you have in terms of enough supply of renewable energy to Kenya's national grid? I'm citing one project, and that is the Lake Turkana wind power project, which was there. I don't know whether you are still there or you had already left. This project, its aim was to supply renewable energy to Kenya's national grid. But there was a lot of corruption. So many millions of Kenyan shillings were embezzled and could not be accounted according to auditors' reports. I don't know how are you going to be dealing with the cartels in the energy sector, because it is just too much. Kenyans are having burden of high bills, fraudulent billing, and maybe it is because of the monopoly of KPLC. What is your take on that status? That they have that monopoly in terms of generation, transmission of electricity, and still they cannot address the plight of the consumers in terms of irregular power outages and other reasons. So what is your take, and what are the way forward for you to ensure that at least Kenyans will enjoy, and at least there will be a reduction in terms of costing for electricity?
Thank you, Mishi. Ferdinand, let's take another one.
Nominee, I just want to make...
be the last.
Yeah,
yes.
I want to make a comment, and a very serious one. The relation between rural electrification and Kenya Power Lighting. You'll find that they do their survey, and they bring the transformers and are fixed in whatever place it is, and takes months and weeks and, for the Kenyan Power Lighting to come and do the connections. That's been a challenge in the rural area. That has been a major complaint among the consumers. So what are you going to do about that?
Davis, can you answer those 5 as precisely?
Mheshimiwa Kosing, Kapenguria and clean power, yet we generate out of Takwel. I'm surprised that the substation in Otum, which our Chairman, Speaker, I would like to invite you to my first report to Parliament in line with the Constitution, which captured serious project Gantt charts on Otum, I've just checked, and Otum substation is in my project Gantt chart. It should have been finished. I don't know what happened when I left the office. And so my first assignment would be to review and check what has not, the unfinished work. I'd like to invite members to look at that report. It's a report I made to Parliament in my first year in line with the Constitution, article which requires cabinet secretaries to make a report periodically to Parliament. And the unclean power is a voltage. You know, Chairman, our systems operate at 240. And when the voltage drops, then we are even likely to damage your devices. So even where I come from, it's western part of the country and the voltages are very weak. So around 7 to 10 at night, when all the homes are switched on, the voltages drop. So we just switch off Kenya Power and run on a generator, which is very expensive. So the challenge that faces Kenya is not even the cost of power, because we can continuously run on generator and still make money. The problem is the unclean power, which damages some of our devices. So we need that substation in Otum. But more importantly, we need to finish the Olkaria Lesos. I think it's a 400 kV line, to ensure that we are able to carry high voltage, low current, and step it down. Western part of Kenya has got a challenge, and I think we need to address that. We know the problem. We need to put some investment and obey the timelines in line with the project defined, so that we close some of these issues. So we're going to look at that, Bwana Kosing. Siri Mbalambala, yes, again, it's a comment. We want to treat Garissa, where the power is coming off from solar at 50 megawatts. There is no reason why the community of interest do not have power, and we need to look at that. Within the station, we can be able to have a small substation to serve the community of concern or the community of interest, where we are picking the power from within Garissa and Balambala area. Strategic reserves is becoming a must. We need to look at that. Currently, we do our fuel purchases using spot purchases, which are done through the open tender procurement system, and it's managed by OMCs. The government doesn't put any money. They compete well, and I think we get good price of petroleum products and petroleum products, until we have this challenge which is facing the whole world. But yes, we need to have strategic reserves. We need to build enough tankage. We need to see how best to utilize the KPRL facility, dimension enough storage, but be very careful so that we don't do what is equivalent to aging, or as we age, we make sure we understand, so that we are not holding expensive fuel when the price of fuel has gone down, or vice versa, which would be of advantage to the country. So we'll quickly look at that and address the need for strategic reserves for our country. Gikaria, NOC, capacity charge, fuel charge, and the gas is something that, let me talk to gas first. There's been so much improvement in the use of gas in this country today, and I did pick some numbers which I want to just refer to very quickly. The per capita use of gas in Kenya 15 years ago was at 2.3 kilogram per household. Today we are at 7.5 with this 180 gas, and the initiatives that we have done, albeit the challenge of the one investor who manages the facility, the private investor. If we open up that space, and I've seen the strategic plan of NOC and the energy sector, we want to move to 13 kilograms per capita use of gas per household. If we do that, some of the very, very interesting gains will be like, let me run that again as the forest cover. Again, some 15 years ago, we were at 4% forest cover. Today, we are at 12. If we move the use of gas to 13 kilograms per household, and stop using biomass, because the underside is we are cutting wood to burn for our houses. If we just improve by 5% to go to 13%, the forest cover will go up from 12% to 22%. which is so significant. So we can talk about planting 3 million trees until the cows come home, or we can, yes, and we need to do that, but we can quickly accelerate the facility in Mombasa for gas trading, manage the initiatives that we had started together and which are covered in some of our reports, and we will be able to move our forest cover to 22%, address the global warming by reducing the carbon dioxide, which is not good for our environment and the ozone layer. On fuel, I think we've talked quite a bit on fuel to the extent that we really need to quickly develop our own resource and ensure that we are not over-reliant on our brothers out there. And even when we are, it's not because we don't have ours. So we need to quickly accelerate the development of the Lokicha Basin and ensure that we are able to, whether refine it here or refine outside. You know, there is, in the production sharing contract, the government has a stake in any discovery, so we can buy into our share of the petroleum that has been discovered and be able to use that to address our strategic challenges. Mishimbogo, renewable energy, Lake Turkana, I think we've talked quite a bit about that. And power generation, there'll be a lot of learning, albeit the challenges and the mistakes we have made from power when we do the power purchase agreements, because when a private developer does, like Leongalane, which is the Lake Turkana we are talking about, they get what you call a PPA, a power purchase agreement, which is a document which helps them to raise banks, whether in the international market. So unless the impropriety is coming at the negotiations of the PPA, if the private investor does funny games during the development of the project, it does not change the structure and the cost structure on the PPA. So maybe to just simply answer your question, we'll need to look more critically into what goes into our PPA. Are we generous? Are we giving them too much in the PPA so that they play games? And therefore, because it locks the cost of power, it is locked at the PPA stage, which is done before the project picks up. I'm told by my predecessor, if I get approved, Monica Jumwa, that she has since moved the PPA negotiations to the ministry and will work more closely with the off-taker, which is Kenya Power, to ensure that the PPAs do reflect the cost of power that we would like to drive this economy. Because like I said earlier, if we are going to attract global firms, the cost of our energy is basically not acceptable. We have to bring it down, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Davis. I think we'll end here with you.
Can I finish, Ferdinand? Was that a comment or a question?
He just made a comment.
It was a comment?
Yes.
So, but I talked earlier about unbundling. The challenge between this energy sector, though they are unbundled, they tend to crisscross each other. And we need to define clear lines. Where does REC start? Or rather, where does Kenya Power start? Where does REC start? So that we don't have one company bringing the transformer, another one is pulling the lines, and where are the costs captured in the cost structures of the organization? These are some of the challenges we are facing in the energy sector. And sometimes it is competition for business because it depends on who is doing the tendering. But if the responsibility belongs to REC, let it be at REC, and they should deliver in line with the timelines. If it belongs to Kenya Power, let's be very clear about those definitions of responsibilities. Thank you, Chairman.
One question is not answered.
The
one on the monopoly.
Mishi, I'd indicated, and I didn't want to speak very loudly because of the fact that we have quite a bit of letters of support as government to Kenya Power, and we need to support Kenya Power even as a monopoly for a while. But in the Energy Act 2019, that monopoly has been opened up, and we'll just need to see how to implement the off-grid very carefully, how we ensure that we don't incur power losses because of long transmission and building lines into remote areas where we can do off-grid, And so the monopoly is not going to be a challenge going forward because the Act has addressed that. Thank you.
There is one final question. Kenya Power is a monopoly. It has no competitor, apart from now the few isolated solar panels here and there that are grossly insignificant to their overall performance. Why are they constantly in financial difficulties? They sell a commodity that you and I cannot do without. When you default, they come and disconnect you on the pole, literally extorting your payback and reconnection. Why are they having financial difficulties?
Yeah, it's a dollar question, Chairman, that we all need to look at, because when you are a monopoly, and like I said in one of my term papers, we need to look at, when the market is locked for you, you tend to be complacent. The investment today that is needed to strengthen the Kenya Power network could be significant. But I wouldn't really, it's a challenge, but like
if you look at their billing,
yeah,
they literally have no overheads. They pass on everything to the consumer. Everything. Why are they in the red constantly? I think you must go there and correct this if we approve your nomination.
Kenya Power balance sheet, like a NOC, is it NOC? Yes, needs to be looked at. I think unless we address the kind of exposure they've put themselves into, so that really we need to restructure Kenya Power balance sheet. It is not looking good. I can't say on camera that I've seriously looked at it, but the Kenya Power balance sheet and the kind of exposure is quite significant. It should be doing much better to be having a loan of about 100 billion against a revenue of 60 billion. And a lot of that money belongs to KenGen, the generators, and so on and so forth. Is something that boils down to a cash flow. The cash they collect is not enough to service where we almost find ourselves as a country today. We collect so much revenue, is it enough to service our loans and run the social obligations that we need to run as a government? And then so we need to support Kenya Power not with cash, but we need to look at, to re-engineer the whole way of how they do business. Banks will market what would otherwise look like cheap loan. And because a lot of the generators, the lot of generation and build-up in the power sector do get government letters of support, sometimes the ball ends up being the government responsibility. So, Chairman, there's a job to be done in the energy sector. We need to look at how to restructure the balance sheet. We need to look at how to strengthen the network, which is the power loss today on the network is almost at 20%. So when you're losing 20% and you have to recover from you and me, it's not tenable. So yes, there's work to be done, Chair, and I think we are up to the task. Thank you.
I give you 3 minutes to tell us your last wish.
Chairman, I feel privileged to come to talk to this honorable house today again after being nominated for the position of energy and petroleum, to see whether we can together rebuild this country. The cost of power is a fundamental driver in the economic foundation of any nation, and unless we together address the cost of power, the power mix, the power security, like I said earlier, when we talk about competitive cost of power, and we want to bring investors into our special economic zones in Ndung'u, in Olkaria, where we have ready steam for primary processing of leather, can we get the cost of power right? Kenya enjoys a very special place in the state of nations, in that we do about 90% of green energy. And we are one of the qualifying countries to even go into green hydrogen, which is another phase of development in power and export of power in hydrogen, where it's a requirement that if you're going to go into this green area of development of green hydrogen, you must be using green energy to do that. And as we go forward, except for the challenges we are facing in the security of supply and the cost of
affirmation.
I, Moses Kuria, do hereby swear to testify on all matters in question and tell this committee the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Honorable Moses Kuria, thank you. This committee is chaired by yours truly, the Speaker.
Thank you, Chair.
And we have members who I will invite to introduce themselves, starting with Honorable Wandai.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, my name is Opio Wandai, the MP for Ugunja.
My name is Junet Mohammed, MP Suna East.
My name is Owen Baya, MP Kilifi North.
Robert Mbui, MP Kadhiani.
Rehab Mokami, County MP Nyeri.
Ferdinand Kevin Wanyonyi, Member of Parliament Kwanza, Trans Nzoia County.
George Gitonga Murugara, Tharaka.
Kosing David, MP Pogo South.
Abdul Rahim Daud, MP North Imenti, Meru County.
Honorable Mishimboko, MP Likoni.
Nelson Koech, MP Belgut.
Good evening, Caleb Wamisi, MP Saboti.
Dido Raso, MP Saku.
Abdi Shurie, Balambala.
Emma Semeri, Teso South.
Stephen Mule, Matungulu.
David Gikare, your friend, Nakuru Town is constituency.
Naisula Lesuda, MP Samburu West.
Description should come from Janet, from the Pangan experience.
Yes, Chair.
This meeting is not adversarial, like we have told all members. We want to have a candid, open exchange of ideas. Members are interested in establishing your suitability for the nomination you have gotten as our Minister for Trade, Investment and Industry. We want to have a cordial exchange, observe basic rules of the committee, address the committee through the chair. Members will also ask you questions through the chair. We limit any direct exchange between yourself and the committee members, and we will encourage you to answer questions as precisely and as concisely as they are asked. And members asking also, we expect you to be concise and precise. And in the interest of time, when you ask a question, give time to the nominee to answer. let's not veer off the line too much. I will now ask you to present certain documents which, if you have sent to us and you have the originals, they will be compared by the clerks and the originals will be given back to you. Do you have the compliance with tax obligations? That's the KRA tax compliance?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair.
Clearance with the Higher Education Loans Board?
Yes, I do.
Clearance with Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission?
Yes, I do.
Certificate of Good Conduct from the DCI?
Yes, I do.
Have you ever been charged in a court of law convicted of an offense?
I've been charged but never convicted.
Are you a dual citizen of Kenya and any other jurisdiction?
No, Mr. Chair.
Excellent. We go to, what is your value, what is your financial net worth?
My financial net worth, Mr. Chair, is 750 million shillings.
You have a segregated breakdown?
I do not, but I can proceed to tell you the distribution.
You can tell the committee on hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My net worth is comprising of real estate development and shares held in unlisted companies in my business concerns, in manufacturing, in fintech, and in energy sector.
Excellent. And
Chair,
yes,
I wanted him to not to interrupt you, Chair. He's the chairman of independent petroleum dealers. So whether the shares are there.
Chair, I said as much, but Honorable Junet being one of my members, I welcome that. Thank you.
So we may require both of you to disclose further and better particulars. Honorable members, I'll open the floor by asking the Honorable Moses Kuria that will give you 10 minutes. If you spend less, the better. That clock will start ticking. We should be done with you in 90 minutes. Tell us the story of your life till the arrival of where you are sitting.
Thank you, Chair. I was born 51 years ago in Gatundu South in Kiambu County. I attended primary school in a school by the name of Githoya Primary in Gatundu South. That is between the year 1977 and the year 1983. I attended another school called Itulo High School in Gatundu South for my O-levels between the year 1984 and 1987, and I passed with flying colors. I proceeded for my A-levels, Thika High School, between the year 1988 and the year 1989. Again, I passed well, and I was admitted to the University of Nairobi, in the year 1990 for a Bachelor of Commerce degree, specializing in accounting and finance. I graduated in the year 1993, and between 1994 and 1995 I worked for various organizations including Total and Lion Brea Investment Bank. In the year 1995 I joined Standard Chartered Bank all the way to 1999, and in the year 1999 I was poached by a bank in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia by the name of Alaji Bank, which happens to be the largest Islamic bank in the world. I worked there for 4 years, and in the year 2003 I teamed up with my colleagues in the Gulf region, and we set up a banking and financial sector consultancy by the name of WAMAD International, and we consulted for banks and other organizations in the area of technology, Islamic finance, and business processes across the entire Middle East represented some leading companies in technology from Europe and India, in Middle East and North Africa, and later on the entire Africa. I came back to Kenya in the year 2007 at the invitation of the late Mwai Kibaki, who was my friend, and he asked me to assist as a consultant in his government, and I worked in that role until the year 2008. In the year 2008, I joined then Minister for Trade, the Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta, as his technical advisor on trade matters. Later on, the Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta was transferred to the National Treasury as a Minister for Finance, and I moved there as also a technical advisor in the Treasury until his election as President in the year 2013. In the year 2014, there arose a by-election in Gatundu South constituency following the sad demise of the then Member of Parliament, Honorable Joseph Ngugi. I offered myself for election in that by-election, and I won. I was the first person in the new constitution to be elected and opposed. Later on, some members who are sitting here would copy from me, including the Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah. And later on, to the year 2017, I was again re-elected Gatundu South until the year 2022. And I held that job. I offered myself to be the governor of Kiambu County. I did not succeed. And I was then nominated by President William Samoei Ruto to be the cabinet secretary in the docket of in the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry. And that's how I am here, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Moses Kuria. I'll now open the floor to members. Honourable members, I'll be strict on direct one question each for the member, the nominee, to answer in the same manner. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Maybe I should also begin by declaring interest, standing on the number 90, because Honorable Moses Kuria, besides being my colleague, has been Member of Parliament in my county and my very close friend since we joined Parliament together. But Honorable Speaker, that being so, here is also copied. He said he attended the University of Nairobi, having missed attending the Alliance High School, to Ituru Boys, so Ituru Secondary School. But that being so, Honorable Speaker, the Honorable Moses Kuria, you're taking over a docket that is very important. And trade between our country and Uganda, you know, Uganda is our topmost bilateral trade partner in the region, but there exists a huge potential between our country and Ethiopia. I would want to hear what your thoughts are in relation to cross-border trade between our country and our neighboring countries, Ethiopia, and access to the African free trade area in the larger region. Also on matters to do with trade, you are aware that our traders here in Nairobi and in many other urban centers suffered immensely under the previous regime, especially our traders in downtown Nyamakima, Kamukunji, in Isli. And since these are trade docket issues, right from the question of standards under KEBS to the smooth clearance of goods at the port of Mombasa, I would also want to hear your thoughts on that. Honorable Speaker, if you indulge me, the Honorable Moses Kuria has also indicated that he has been charged severally. I think he forgot the word severally. But he has indicated he has never been convicted. However, Honorable Moses Kuria, there is an affidavit that has been filed by a petitioner who alleges that you once confessed to having received some bribe somewhere. I don't know the authenticity of these allegations, whether it is indeed true, as the petitioner says, that you have confessed to having taken a bribe. With that, Honorable Speaker, I'm good.
You'll take 4. Okay. One day.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Kuria, you know, unlike some of us in this room who know you, okay, a number of Kenyans out there tend to misunderstand you. Sometimes they perceive you as someone who is divisive, who can cause animosity by the way you carry yourself and the manner you communicate. What assurance can you give Kenyans in live television that you mean well for the cohesion of the country, the unity of Kenya, being a multi-ethnic, multiracial society, that Kenyans should not feel afraid when they hear your name or when they see you? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Chairman. Chairman, I want to state that Moses Kuria is my friend. We spent 4 to 5 days together in Pangani in the cell.
You should also disclose that I came there to see you.
You okay? Mr. Speaker, it's true. I was coming to that. So you also visited us there and you gave us some legal advice. And he did a lot of things there, but that's a subject for discussion another day. But now now that will not stop me from vetting him now, Mr. Chairman. So the question I wanted to put to him is, if you are approved and made the Minister for Transport, for Trade, how will you deal with this question of counterfeit goods? Because it is becoming a delicate issue in this country on how to protect the local manufacturing industry and the counterfeit goods that are coming from outside. So how will you strike a balance between the two so that you save the people who are manufacturing locally and you also don't stop people who are coming from importing goods are being told that you are bringing counterfeit goods? What is your vision on that? And lastly, the issue of trade imbalance. Like if you see this, there's a question here that it's now 120 billion shillings, the trade imbalance. How do you intend to address that? What are your thoughts on that? Thank you very much.
Yes, Robert.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Chair, I still want to deal with Chapter 6, which is very important for nomination and election or appointment of public or state officers. And we must look at that article in terms of deed and word. Now, the nominee is publicly known. He's a very highly publicly known individual. His comments, his on Twitter, on Facebook. His temperament has actually been highly publicized. He himself did say that he was bribed by the Honorable Amos Kimunya. And Peter Mungai's affidavit, which is in our files, states that in 2013, he threatened to hunt down those that had voted for Raila Amolo Odinga. Again, I understand early this year from this affidavit, he threatened to remove one of Uhuru's, I cannot say the word, maybe he can male engine parts. And he's been noted on national TV using 4-letter words. And not to forget that he once walked out of a TV live interview. So I'd like to ask the nominee, do you honestly feel that you sufficiently qualify to pass the integrity test?
Moses, you can answer those 4.
Thank you very much. Chair, I will...
Speaker, not to interrupt, Honorable Speaker, but with your indulgence, I don't know whether Honorable Mbui said some of the things he's saying are in the affidavit.
They are in the file, Speaker. I picked from the file.
Go on and answer, Moses. I don't think those are insurmountable questions.
Chair, if I may seek guidance, can I choose any order to answer?
Yes.
Okay, so that I can...
All the 4 questions.
Thank you very much.
In as precise a manner as they are precisely asked.
Thank you. Chair, I ask that because I would want to dispense on the whole issue surrounding Chapter 6 that have been raised by Honorable Robert Boy and my good friend Honorable Jumwa and Honorable Opio and I. We've come from a very divisive phase in the politics of our country. Most of us were players in that contest for a long time. And for myself, this contest was, or this participation was way even before I became a member of parliament, since I came back to this country in 2007. So I've been around for around 15 years. I was also around before even I went into professional practice. I should have mentioned that I was the treasurer of the student organization of Nairobi University. So I was politically exposed from that point. And I grew up under the wings and tutelage of Kennedy Matiba and Jalango Odinga. So from the onset, I was weaned and grew up at the time that you were agitating for multipartyism and democracy in this country. That kind of a background at a very early age, because I started working with the team of Matiba and Jaramogi. I was part of the Sabasaba movement. I was there at Kamukunji when we were fighting for removal of Section 2A when I was only 21 years old. And as a participant, we've been involved in, yes, very divisive moments. And the division that characterized this country also shaped many people. So that's a reality. It can only be my hope and desire that all of us collectively will be able to see a Kenya that now, because that is now, you're talking about 30 years, that you can be able to graduate into better political culture that is more issue-based, that is not personality-based. Within those 30 years of divisive politics, we've all collectively said things and done things which to each other we need to have a moment of repentance and forgiveness against each other. And that is not just to me, that is to many political players in this country. So let me say that any perceived extremism or divisiveness on my side has been shaped by the kind of political culture we've had. And going forward, as we progress, I am going to play my role in ensuring that we have a culture where political competition is not enmity, but it's just that, competition. And I do not think that personally, as a person, I have got anything within my DNA that is synonymous with hate or extremism or separation. I have been in this parliament. I enjoy very cordial relations with most of these members, good moments and bad moments, and with most political players. And so to answer the question of the Honorable Robert Boy, I think I passed that master of Chapter 6 that would enable me to play my role in taking this country forward. I am cognizant and aware of the accusation by one of the affidavits that was received about having accepted to receiving a bribe. And I think that matter was taken out of context. I was called upon to explain my comment by the Speaker, and the Speaker did point out to anything within my comments that was deemed to be external, and the Speaker ruled on that matter. Whatever I said that was outside, including some comment that was not very good to my friend Junet, whereby I actually said that comment confusing our social life outside with life inside Parliament. But I would say that I was called upon by the Speaker to explain. I explained, and in my honest and humble opinion, that matter is spent and is res judicata. And that's what I can say about it. To answer to Honorable Opio and I's, again, as he say, collectively, misunderstood. I am misunderstood in some quarters, but those quarters are mostly within social media and elite circles. If you go to most corners of this country, they know me as a peace-loving Kenyan who is committed to cohesion and who has worked a lot to bring people together. As I can say from some of the region where someone like Opio and I come from, a place like Kondele, I am the second most popular person after Raila odinga, and that's on record. So I am committed to cohesion, and Kenyans can look upon me as somebody who is going to work to bring Kenyans together. Thank you, Mr. Chair, on that issue of Chapter 6. I wanted to dispense on it so that we can, in my opinion, or my request,
Chair,
spend time to...
Chair, again, on a point of order.
Yes.
Chair, I think why I raised the issue of the issues the Honorable Mbui was raising, because I have actually traced the particular issues he was pointing to. And one of them, Honorable Chair, is an email from a Peter Mongai, not on an affidavit, and therefore, Honorable Speaker, in line with all procedures, is not admissible, and the Honorable Mbui should not be allowed to even quote it, refer to it in... It should be a mistake from the clerk's office, because anything on email that is not an affidavit, Honorable Speaker, I think we should guide us on whether we should be referring to emails, because nothing stops any member of the public from making whatever manner of allegation, and those are the things that the Honorable Mbui was referring to.
Chair, I wanted to just respond to the majority leader and say that is not made up. I have found it in the file, and I have meticulously read through the file. So yes, it is not an affidavit, but it is part of the contents of the file that has been placed in front of us for us to be able to use to vet the nominee. And also, I believe the nominee is able and capable of answering even allegations, because that's basically why we are here. Thank you, Chair.
You know, the standing orders is very clear that any member of the public who wishes to bring to the attention of the committee anything adverse against a nominee must bring it by way of affidavit. The clerk tells me that out of exuberance, they decided to pass on to the nominees even materials that were not admissible under the standing orders. So to the extent that that is an email, Robert, we rule that is inadmissible. Let's deal with the affidavits that are on record, and we have furnished them to the nominee. I believe you got them, Moses?
Yes, I did.
Yes. Did you not waive money that you had received a bribe from Kimunya? I think that is what Ichungo was asking.
Chair, I think when I waived the money, I did not say it was from Kimunya. I was only pointing out that there has been efforts to control Parliament from outside. And I believe Parliament is a very important institution. And if I am approved by this House Chair, I will do everything possible to ensure that for those of us in executive, leave Parliament to do its own work.
Are you waiving your own money?
Yes, I was waiving my own money.
The next batch of 4?
Chair, I think I have some questions I didn't answer.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to dispense on Chapter 6 issues. So that,
the remaining questions?
Yes. So on the question by Honorable Jumwa about Ethiopia, indeed, as a very pertinent issue. Ethiopia is a huge market, 120 million in population. It represents a very big opportunity for Kenya in terms of matters trade. And not just Ethiopia. The whole of Africa is a very huge opportunity. Kenya has deposited all the instruments under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. And if I'm approved by this House, one of my priority areas is to ensure that Kenya exploits the huge potential of intra-Africa trade. Currently, intra-Africa trade is only 19%, and this is a conversation we'll be having with my colleagues across Africa to be able to raise this percentage to somewhere even in the region of our East African community, intra-regional trade, which is now standing at 45%. Only 2 weeks ago, I was in Ethiopia as part of President William Ruto's delegation when we launched Safaricom Ethiopia. Again, a very important milestone there. We did even push for Safaricom Ethiopia to get its mobile money business there, and the issue of Safaricom and M-Pesa enabling trade and enabling us to trade within each other is very important. I look forward to working with our side and Ethiopian side to be able to even work to ensure that we can use our local currencies for trade. Both countries, Kenya and Ethiopia, are having some challenges on the forex market, and so there exist opportunities for us to use our local currencies for trade. We have now around 35 countries have deposited instruments within the ACFTA, and indeed opportunities really do abound. Again, 2.5 weeks ago, Kenya did flag off, President Ruto did flag off the first consignment of tea to Ghana under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Guided Trade Mechanism. President Ramaphosa is expected here in the next few weeks in this endeavor of ensuring that Africa, before we look for markets beyond our borders, we exploit what exists here. I've been a question about our traders in the informal sector, in Nyamakema, in all other areas. And it's true that our business community and our traders have gone through very difficult times having their goods auctioned. We've had before presidential events for banning of goods. Not before you used to have banning of ivory and such kind of things. Now we've had presidential events for banning of goods, and what I would want to assure our business community that if I'm approved for this position, I will ensure that our people are free to do business and to have an environment where they are not. We have to stop the culture of criminalizing enterprise, and that's why we say as Kenya Kwanza that every hustle matters. The question by Honorable Junet Mohammed about counterfeit is very important. But let me say this about counterfeit. If I have had this discussion with our anti-counterfeit agency, I would wish that the efforts we extend to fight counterfeit is for protecting local manufacturers. Committee who asked me for this help, the honorable member for Nakuru East is in this committee. So because we need to have this conversation and be able to separate, is it counterfeit or substandard? For substandard, we are going to use all efforts possible to stop substandard goods and believe in ourselves as a country. I have expressed my intention, Mr. Chair. We now have pre-shipment inspection that happens in other countries. And by the way, we do spend a lot of our money, dollars, foreign currency that we don't have, to some very young companies in China and other countries. It is my assumption that before these goods come to this country, because our pre-shipment inspection is done there, shouldn't we have inspected for counterfeit there? Much as we inspect for standards here, why do we let a container come all the way from Guangzhou in China, come here, and then when it comes here, we talk about counterfeit? I have expressed intention to open a window of shipment inspection and post-shipment inspection. If you choose to have your goods inspected in China, you will have them inspected in China. Also, I'm going to open a window to have these goods inspected here so that we can take responsibility for our own. And maybe if it's inspection is happening in Mombasa, that is more business for the people of Mombasa, more jobs for the people of Mombasa. Most importantly, to stop the hemorrhage of foreign currency when we send this for inspection. So we are going to look at all this, look at counterfeit within the context of doing the most important thing, protecting our local manufacturers so that they can protect our jobs and growing manufacturing to 20% of GDP by the year 2030. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Owen, everybody. Your name is everybody. Mukami, Ferdinand, Murugara after Owen. I'll just Since everybody wants, I'll just give everybody.
Okay, thank you very much, Speaker and Chair. On Moses Kuria, as you wait for confirmation to take office, I would like to know your thoughts on the African Growth and Opportunities Act and the expansion of EPZ. The Kenya Kwanza manifesto talks about job creation, and EPZ has been one of those instruments that we have used through the AGOA Treaty to actually expand and increase jobs within the country. But again, there are challenges. A lot of investors who would want to come here and actually invest within EPZ and AGOA have issues of land. Where do they get land? The cost of land in this country to set up factories and manufacturing is exorbitant. It's prohibitive. It makes investors not want to go into this. How will you restructure EPZ such that there is availability of land, that we take advantage of the opportunities offered, bring in more manufacturing, save the foreign currency, like you're saying, and also take care of the welfare of the people who work within EPZ so that they feel that they're properly employed. Thank you.
Mukami.
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations to the nominee, Moses Kuria. I know you have what it takes considering you're in this industry. I served in Trade Committee last term, and trade and industry, there were so many challenges. Moses, I want to ask you, what are some of the policies you put in place to promote agro-processing, value addition, and diversification of products by Kenyans farmers? You remember when we are going out through this country, we were telling our farmers that we are going to make sure that they will have guaranteed minimum return for their tea, for their coffee, for their milk. Another question, what measures will you take to ensure that all the stored projects, because there are so many projects which are stored, because trade and industry, we were not getting money, there was no budget for that. What are you going to do to make sure that you give them priority to finish those projects? Thank you.
Ndung'u Moses Kuria, you are up with the task. I'm just asking, we have a lot of unemployment in this country, particularly the youths. We've had even university graduates roaming around the streets, and some of them are doing informal businesses. How are you going to help us in your ministry, if you are taken, to be able to have these youths? Some of them are still, in fact, when you go in my area, you find some of them, but I saw one guy who has done masters in physical sciences, and it was on the TV, all the way from Siaya, actually making clothes, sewing clothes. So what would you have as a ministry to be able to enable these youths actually get employment?
Rugara.
Thank you, Chairman. Nominee, first and foremost, I think you've told us that maybe last week, His Excellency the President flagged off some crop produce to Ghana.
Yes.
My question is on trade. How do we brand our produce which we are exporting such that we do not have other people branding our produce as their own and selling it at better prices than we are doing, because that may be one contributor of the imbalance in trade. Number two,
entitled to one question.
Sorry. Sorry, let me, the real one now is here. I represent a rural constituency. The real question, that was for Kenya now. Let me ask you something for Tharaka. I represent a rural constituency. We've talked of unemployment, we've talked of everything that is negative about rural constituencies, and I would like to hear from you, what plans do you have in terms of investment and industry in rural areas and rural towns and markets, including Marimanti, which you know very well in Daraka, so that those who live down there do not feel that it's only a rural-urban migration that can assist them procure jobs, but we would, as a government, be taking jobs to those people in those rural areas.
Moses, those are 4. Let me add Dawood to make 5.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To my friend Moses, one of the key pledges of Kenya Kwanza manifesto is the decriminalization of small enterprises and small traders who have suffered the harassment by county government officials. What steps would your ministry take to create viable markets within various towns and promote small-scale traders, including the youths who would want to establish businesses, but innovation is lacking. Innovation is there, but funds for innovation expansion is lacking. So how would you create those policies so that they can make factories? We can do the factories, what are they in China or wherever, in Kenya and in the rural areas, together with Mukami's question of agro-processing. What would you do regarding value addition to Mira in locally and in the diaspora? Thank you.
You can answer those 5, Moses.
Thank you, Chair. The Honorable Owen Bayer has asked a very important question about AGOA, the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act. This act is coming to a close in 2025. As in my submission to Parliament, you've seen that I'm a player within AGOA, within EPZ. We now have 138 enterprises within that, so that's a space I know very well because I'm one of them. We have concern about AGOA extension. We are watching closely what is happening within the United States. We are supposed to be replacing AGOA with a bilateral agreement which has been in negotiation. It is not clear as we speak about the direction that the Biden administration is taking on AGOA. Because there has been mixed signals whether AGOA is going to be extended, whether the Biden administration is still committed to the Trump administration's initiated bilateral agreement with Kenya. And this is a conversation which informally I've been having with the United States. It is pointing to two things. One, there's a likelihood that we are going to have a stopgap sort of agreement, what we are calling the Strategic Trade and Investment Partnership, STIP, with the United States, as we seek more clarity on the direction to take on the bilateral agreement. But on AGOA itself, we're going to have, if I'm approved by this House, a trade conference, a meeting of African ministers later this year. And Kenya is going to push for a common position for Africa that we have to have AGOA extended. Like all agreements, they are also subject to local politics. So by that time, I think in the next 2-3 weeks, we are going to have the midterm elections in the US, something which I'll be watching very closely to see which direction the Congress takes. But irrespective of whatever happens, Africa and Kenya being on the front line is going to ask that we take a common African position, and that is that AGOA is not going anywhere. So we will be coming back to this House to seek support, even as we deal with the other legislatures within the African continent, and to also express strongly the desire of Kenyan people and the African people that this act is very useful. It has grown jobs. We are exporting quite a lot under AGOA. We have not even exploited the list of products and services that can be exported within AGOA. So short answer is whether we are going for bilateral or not bilateral, whether we are going for the short-term strategic initiative or not. It is my commitment and the commitment of President William Ruto to push within the African context that we are able to ring fence and protect AGOA. He has also asked another important question about the EPZ and the special economic zone. And I think another question has been asked about the cost of land for the EPZ. By the way, we don't have shortage of land for manufacturing. What we have is a lot of EPZ allocated in most of the counties that has not been developed. And I've had this discussion with the president, and we have agreed that we are going to fast track development of every idle space. Because of the political problems that our neighbors in Ethiopia went through, most of Ethiopia was suspended from AGOA, and so therefore all that there's a lot of demand for industrial space within the EPZ. Sri Lanka had similar problems, which also lowered their exports, especially to key markets like the United States. So to be able to take advantage of this upsurge in demand, especially from the US and key markets like China and Europe, it is our desire that we are going to develop every available space. At the same breath, we have got two flagship, let me call them three, one is not very apparent. We have got the Dongo-Kundu Special Economic Zone in Kwale County, which it is our, I'm a very firm instruction from the President that upon approval by this Parliament, we have to make Dongo-Kundu move from paper to practice, to take it off so that we can be able to create jobs. The Naivasha Special Economic Zone as well. We are going to see a lot of activities in that area to take it off the ground. We have got investors who have come in with proposals. I think the immediate past government did flag off one of the major investment projects in Naivasha from Turkish investors. And other economic zones, special economic zones, Konza Development City, which doesn't appear like an economic zone, but actually is a special economic zone that, if I'm approved by this House, I am going to be working very hard around the clock to bring in global technology companies within the Konza Technopolis. Two new planned special economic zones. One is a Railway City Development Authority right here in Nairobi, adjacent to the railway, which we hope to be our masterpiece for new urbanization, and the Nairobi International Financial Center to bring together the world leading financial institutions. So these are the public special economic zones. But also our people and also foreign investors have trooped in with private special economic zones. So far we have got around 13 special economic zones by private entities. Our agenda is to have an open door policy. I know a lot of people have been going out there saying, I have applied for my SEZ license, I did not get approval, I have the land, I have the money. It is inconceivable, Mr. Chair, how you can frustrate somebody who have their own land and they have more money. I'm still trying to grapple with that very, very confusing situation. And so therefore, as a summary, we are going to ensure that we expand our EPZ, and we are going to expand the special economic zones to use our public SEZs like Dongo-Kundu, Railway City Developments, Nairobi Financial Center, and Naivasha, Konza, to be able to spur jobs and bring the much needed foreign exchange in this country. And as the Honorable Bayer has said, even within those EPZ and special economic zones, we are going to work with the stakeholders to ensure that we also protect the rights of workers, and actually do insist to the buyers of the products that come from EPZ and SEZ that we have to commit to fair labor practices and other ethical business behavior. Let me address the question by Honorable Mukami, which is very, very important, on the issue of, and I think also Honorable Murugala has asked us a related question. Is our manufacturing an urban affair? Is it a Nairobi affair? Is it a big city affair? And the answer is no. Even within our Kenya Kwanza manifesto, we have planned aggregation centers in every county. So I want to assure members that in every county, we are going to have an aggregation center where we can be able to help our Ndung'u farmers and even our miraa farmers to aggregate their export, introduce refrigeration. Shortly after, if I am approved by this House, we are planning a pilot one which was already in the works in Aisha. But I am having this discussion with the Council of Governors to identify our competitive matrix for each county, because every county has got their unique competitiveness in terms of products, and we are going to ensure that not just for value addition, but from these centers we are going to do value addition, but also promote exports. It is my desire also to have a flagship mega manufacturing project in every county, according to the unique needs of every county. Kenya, I am really surprised, Mr. Chair, by the demand by foreign manufacturers and also local manufacturers to set up industries in Kenya. We just have not been doing it right. We have treated our investors as if we are doing them a favor. I am going to go on a knee and bend backwards to ask them to come in there and to show them a map of where Malimanti is. So I want to assure members that this issue of aggregation and having industrial hubs in every county is going to be at the heart of my ministry and in the Kenya Kwanza government. Now, attendant to this also is we have not been fair to our people. Expecting a Ndung'u farmer from Malimanti to know of a market and to know who is a buyer from that market and start trading with them is not realistic. So coupled with our aggregation centers that we are going to set up in the counties, we want to set up warehouses in key markets, and we have agreed with the president that we are doing 2 pilots of Kenya warehouse. Call them Kenyan supermarkets if you may. It's like a supermarket but uniquely and exclusive for Kenyan products. One in DRC, in the eastern part of DRC, so that if you are a Ndung'u farmer from Malimanti, or if you are, you export another product, you can be able to take your product from your county aggregation hub to the Goma or Lubumbashi or Dubai, where we are setting up the other Kenyan warehouse, and so that now from that Kenyan warehouse we can be able to sell locally, even through e-commerce to those countries. That way we are going to simplify the trade process. I have no even idea how we have been exporting. Chair, you'll be shocked to know that we only have 18 trade attaches in the whole world. These are the people who are supposed to support us in the matters trade and to support our exporters. Africa, with all the opportunities that I've talked about, we have only 8 trade attaches. We do not have a trade attaché in Nigeria, a market of 200 million people. So if I'm approved by this House, I am going to ensure that we have got more trade attaches and trade missions than we have ambassadors. Because what we need is people to help our people to open new markets and to assist and support our exporters in this endeavor. So short answer is that we are going to see that. Honorable Mukami, I know there's a problem of budget for trade. Trade has not been treated very well. I do hope that now this parliament, under the leadership of the chair, is going to look more favorably when we come asking for more budget allocations to support trade. All these manenos that I've talked about of trade, of manufacturing, of export, turning to the question by my good friend Honorable Magufuli, the Honorable Wanyonyi, sorry. I normally visit him in his village. He's my good friend. Right. So all this question about manufacturing, about trade, is going to add to jobs. So we cannot get jobs by kneeling down and saying a prayer, much as we are a religious country. We have to manufacture, we have to export, and we have to support our people. So the sum total of all that is going to be more jobs. And as I've said, we are going to decriminalize enterprise. We are going to really to prove and show that every hustle matters. And we are going to do this as national government, but also sit down with the national government, with the county government, to ensure that this is done. I should say, Honorable Rahim, that DRC is one of our most promising markets for Mira and Mogoka. And I'm saying that Mira and Mogoka because if I leave it to Honorable Rahim, it's only going to be Mira. But I also have a lot of presentation from people from Embu and other counties that we do open this market for DRC. Not yet, but it is immense market and huge market. So once this market is open, we are going to ensure that Mira is also not only processed but get into this market. Finally, on the issue of how can we help our young people, our people to manufacture. Kenya is the only country where we expect someone to come up with an idea, and we expect them also to have good management, and also we expect them to have the money. In other countries, it is enough just to have a good idea. Somebody else comes under my ministry. We are going to avail business capital and credit for anyone who wants to do manufacturing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Everybody will ask, so don't worry. Emase, Amishi, Emase, Raso, Amisi. We start with Mishi. Oh, Mishi is not...
No, with me.
You are ready? Okay. One question each, please. I'll start with Mishi.
Okay. Yeah.
Then Emase, then Raso, then Amisi.
Thank you, Chair. First, I want to say thank you to the nominee because of giving us the information regarding Dongokundu Special Economic Zone. I want to inform you that it cut across Mombasa and Kwale, in fact, in my constituency. My question would be, currently we have seen so many manufacturers opting to leave Kenya because of overtaxation, increase in cost of production, and environment in terms of business. Again, we have seen our informal traders in our counties, or rather our cities. They've been harassed, and also the issue of overtaxation. So how do you intend to collaborate with the county government to ensure that you intervene on this matter? And again, how are we going to ensure that we are bringing back the manufacturers? A good example is the Sensodyne and Panadol, which they left this country because of the so many reasons I've just mentioned. So what will be your intervention to ensure that we lure more of them to come back to this country so that we can create employment and then it can be game changer in our economy? Thank you.
Honorable Emase.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The nominee for trade, you realize that our products from the neighboring countries, especially agricultural products, have flooded our markets. And sometimes our farmers are forced to sell their produce at very low prices. A case in point is the issue of sugar, which is one of importation of sugar, which is one of the factors ailing the sugar industry and has contributed towards crippling our industries in the western region like the Mumias Sugar Company and others. Now, my question is, how do you intend to open and develop new markets for Kenyan products in addition to the traditional ones? And I mean local, regional, international, and in the spirit of bottom-up, so that we have markets even in areas that need markets. With the anticipation of the Hustler Fund, would expect us to open more markets in our villages so that those mamambogas, the borders, they receive a market from within ourselves. And I'm glad that you mentioned the issue of exploring other markets in the region, like Congo with 100 million population, Ethiopia with 121 million population. So if we leverage on our bilateral, friendly bilateral relations, then I think we should be able to open so many markets and therefore create a market for our produce. Thank you.
Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Moses, mine is about the high cost of doing business in Kenya, particularly in terms of licensing. That if you want to invest or open a radio station, commercial for that matter, Actually, it is placed way out of the ability of an ordinary Kenyan. And these are among the many investment that Kenyans can do. I also heard you talking about Ethiopia. As we are talking, Ethiopia is a big market, but the problem is the border. Right now, the Ethiopian border at Moyale is closed, and yet it is a very vibrant area that a lot of exchanges of goods, money, even the opening of Safaricom has opened a new avenue for Kenyans and Ethiopians to do business. Finally, you are also an entrepreneur and a first rater for that matter. We are looking east, but also we are doing a lot of things in the west. And also there is a market within the Middle East that a lot of Kenyans are putting their money there. From where you sit, where should Kenya eventually look to get better value for money and also to allow the growth of SMEs? Because I think a lot of goods in the West are not affordable to the ordinary Kenyans. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Amisi.
Yes, I will revisit this issue of African continental free trade area. As much as we agree it's a milestone in trying to expand our African market, but when you revisit the European Union, the establishment of the European Union trading blocks has its own merits and demerits. As much as it increased the overall performance in terms of trade of the European countries, it results us to Brexit. And of course, the reasons is this kind of asymmetric relationship where one country feels that it is being eaten more than it is receiving. Are we learning, as much as we are progressively going towards the African free trade agreements, which some countries have even shied away from ratifying? Are we having lessons learned from Brexit so that it's not repeated in this new ventures? What are these lessons we learned? How can we approach this African trade, free trade continental area as a country so that we don't
And we have committed ourselves to sit down as a government to look at what we can be able to do, because our current policy, if you look at areas like tea, is actually incentivizing not manufacturing, not value addition. It is much easier and much more profitable to export tea which is not processed. So just tomorrow, the President is expected to outline our manufacturing agenda for the next 10 years in a public event. And if I would just say that the issue of if you want to manufacture in Kenya, you are going to find a friend in the government of Kenya. If you want to make Kenya a dumping ground for goods from all over, then you are going to be in for a very rough time. So this is a discussion of how do we use our taxation policy to ensure that we remain competitive. Of course, one of the things we are offering, and we are having that discussion with KRA, is that us as a Ministry of Trade, we are going and manufacturing and investment, we are going to be at the forefront of helping to expand the tax base and to help in rationalizing and making efficient policies of how to collect tax. In return, we expect that once we increase our tax revenue, and we are going to do that because we want to embark on a system of voluntary tax payment by our business community. the culture of weaponizing our KRA is over. Instead of weaponizing KRA, we are working to ensure that our business community voluntarily, through an efficient tax system, they pay taxes. In return, we'll be asking that some of the areas where we can be able to reduce our taxes to spur manufacturing, then we can do that. Of course, and I want members to have indulgence of members in this area. We are bound by the East African community, the common external tariff. So what we do still is, our hands are sort of tied by the EAC protocol, and more significant by COMESA, because COMESA goods from COMESA countries like Egypt, which have got much lower cost of production, they are supposed to, they can enter into this market duty-free within the COMESA setup. So I am cognizant of that, and I'm aware that we have to look at those factors which are making goods, especially from countries like Egypt, to be more competitive. Nowadays, we are even complaining about Uganda. I think if our grandfathers wake up, they will be shocked. How can Kenya start complaining about Uganda? What happened? I was in Uganda the other day, and I was talking to the trade minister of Uganda about eggs. I come from a county that is known for exporting, for producing eggs, Kiambu County. And we told him, look, our farmers are complaining that because of your eggs, and this also answers to a question by Honorable Mary Amasi, that we are not getting a market for eggs because of floods from Uganda. And the Minister of Trade of Uganda told me something very profound. Every week, Uganda imports 1 million day-old chicks from Kenya. 1 million. So we are very good in producing day-old chicks. So these chicks go to Uganda, they become mature, they lay eggs, and then we refuse the eggs. And he was asking me, how can you refuse eggs from your own chicken? Because they are coming from us. And the answer is very simple. It's about our cost of production. That is why sometimes when I get surprised about people who are opposing our policy on GMO, because only GMO is going to level the field between us and Uganda. As long as we continue to oppose GMO, we should not complain about Uganda, because Uganda, every centimeter of Uganda is arable, and so the cost of production is much lower. And that speaks also to the question of sugar. We have got 3, 4, 5 sugar companies here. There are 17, Mr. Chairman, sugar companies in Uganda. So unless we look at the issue of efficiency, the issue of competitiveness, the issue of the cost of production, then we are not going to help ourselves much. Egypt is another major problem. Let me not call it a problem, but challenge, because it is clear that
The legends and familiar chants will grace KBC once again. Don't miss the FIFA World
to bring up this opportunity for intra-Africa trade. We are way behind other regions, and Kenya and East Africa, instead of having even small fights between us and Tanzania, small fights between us and Uganda, we need to hold hands together. And in my informal discussion with the trade ministers of this country, I've told them we need to look at this beyond our rivalry, our sibling rivalry within the East African region. Hold hands, go out there, sell in Ghana, sell in South Africa, sell in Morocco, take advantage. There is a very huge opportunity. So I think we are going to be structuring our final protocols within the CFTA, and we are going to ensure that we put every effort to ensure that we don't do something today that we are going to regret tomorrow and want to exit it. Kenya has everything to gain from a CFTA. As a trade minister, it is, if I'm approved, I intend to be the lead champion of CFTA within Africa. I've requested His Excellency the President to actually be the main champion from the presidential level of CFTA, because we have huge opportunities in this area. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair, just briefly to clarify, actually the point was not to exit. The point was what can we learn from Brexit?
Thank you, that's a good question. That's a good thing. But I think how to run from that is you clarify our vision. We are going to clarify our vision.
Brexit was not trade. It was nationalism.
Yes.
And politics.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It was not trade.
But here...
and Britain has still secured its very safe trade activities and engagement with Europe.
There's no...
I would advise my dear younger colleague that, you know, a driver should not drive in anticipation of an accident.
Yes.
We should be positive.
Chair, I think you are speaking not just as a chair of this committee, but also as a one of the past predecessors in my ministry. I'll be coming for some more Kenyans and some briefing notes from you, because you had a very successful stint as a Minister for Trade. I think there's one question I think that made me, but I think it's important, from the Honorable Koech about cotton. Indeed, we have a problem. We say we are in the manufacture of apparel, but actually we are in the business of stitching. We are in the business of stitching because of cotton. Yet there exist huge opportunities for growth of cotton in some counties. County alone can be able to supply us with cotton. So we are going to look at this issue of Rivertex and create value chains within the cotton, ensure that within 8 to 10 years we can be able to be self-sufficient in cotton. Tanzania is very much on that route, and because of the huge opportunities within AGOA, especially if it's extended, then I think that is something that can be able to help us. There is somebody, I think, Honorable Wanyonyi, who's mentioned something that I also don't want to disappear, about this graduate who is teaching sewing. I think there's nothing wrong with sewing, and I really applaud that gentleman. I told myself I am a tailor because I'm in this industry and I'm very highly educated and qualified. What we need to do is to make that gentleman benefit from sewing by giving them capital and introducing them to things like EPZ and AGOA. Because the problem now is that we are not taking AGOA to that gentleman. If we had taken AGOA to that gentleman, he would be very proud to be a tailor. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Shall we have Naisula, Gikaria, and Mule?
Backbenchers. So thank you, Chair. And to the nominee, there has been a big focus on tea, coffee. I've heard you say Ndung'U, you know, all that. When it comes to trade, while I believe there's a whole industry that as a country we have not really tapped, and I've heard you say something about northern Kenya, and that is the skin, hides, horns, hooves, you know, all that. Very few people know that our buttons are made from hooves. And just our neighbor here, Ethiopia, has really maximized this industry. And I believe that I believe that, people just got independence the other day. So what do you think are some of the constraints that have hindered full exploitation of this industry, and what interventions can be put in place once you are approved by this committee and sworn in?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry.
Please ask your question.
Okay, Chair. Vice Chair. And pongezi Moses for your appointment to this. As I ask this question, I will also ask a question which has just been asked by a Kenyan who has told me to ask. The question that I wanted to ask, of course, notwithstanding the separation between under Schedule 4, what the national government does and what the county government does, how do we intend to collaborate with the county governments to ensure that informal traders in Nairobi and other cities are not subjected to harassment and overtaxation by the county governments? That is my question. But also, this ministry has been renamed Trade, Investment and Industry. In light of that, on matters to do with what is investment? And what this Kenyan is asking is, we are talking more about Kenyans doing investments, but we have people from outside the country coming to invest, but they are closing down. And some of these investments that are coming down or being closed is ShopRite, which was, I think, a supermarket. And now there is another company that has already given notice. And of course, many Kenyans are going to lose their job. There is this other company called Game. It's under the MassMart group of companies, and it's coming to an end again. So we have investors coming in, and then within a short period again they are walking out. But generally, what is investment?
Kari, I'm told you have asked 4 questions.
No. Only a question. One.
Okay.
Actually, it's only one.
Okay.
The other one was from a Kenyan who really wanted to.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I want to go back to the nominee on the issue whereby our trading partners from several parts of the world are calling us or are saying that we have very stringent conditions of export. And then I take that with also very punitive taxation policies we have within the country, gives the reverse vice versa of the trade imbalance in this country. And if I can elaborate that briefly, if you look at a product like petroleum, it attracts close to 7 different taxes. I can name them, Honorable Kuria, VAT, IDF, road maintenance levy, petroleum development levy, railway development levy, merchant shipping levy. Now, from where you are sitting, the internal punitive taxation we are having for products coming in and products we are exporting, where do we balance the trade of this country to level it to the common mwananchi to make sure that we bring the cost of trading down and affordable products for Kenyans, whereby the government will still make more money because of the volumes? Because if this trade goes, you can be assured as a trade minister, your volumes of export and import will decline, and then you will have no revenue. Thank you.
Yes, Moses, can you?
Thank you, Chair. Very important question that I think several members have asked on this issue of county and national. If I get you right, members are saying, yes, we've heard what we are going to do on the national level, but you have no control over county level. Let me say, trade, industry, investment is interrelated from national level to county level. And I've had this discussion with the chair of Council of Governors. We are going to have a trade and industry conference soon for counties, for us to establish a framework of working, how we are going to work together between the national government and the county government. That conference, we are going to develop work together on a charter that is going to guide how both the two levels of government are going to approach the issue of trade and the issue of manufacturing. That is the charter that is also going to see how we work together to establish the export hubs, the aggregation hubs within the counties. We cannot do that unless we also agree jointly within the two levels how we are going to treat our business people and our traders. And it is not inconceivable that we are creative around the issue also of licensing. I would want to see a single business license for both county government and national government. The other murky area is even inter-county licenses, especially in areas like logistics and transportation. You find somebody coming from Kisumu as a transporter, they pay some levy there to some county there, they come to Bugoma, another county, they come to Nakuru, another county. By the time these goods are getting to Nairobi, it becomes unmanageable. So I think because we are serving the same people and we are one country, there is need for county government and national government to come together through this intergovernmental charter on trade and investment, which is going to address some of these concerns, so that one party does not behave well. If the other party does not equally behave well, then it's counterproductive. And by the way, our people and the business people and the traders and the manufacturers, they wouldn't care less whether it's county government or national government. That is for us here, Uno. So I believe that with sufficient goodwill, so with really a spirit of cooperation between the national government and the county government, we can be able to work together on this. Let me address also the question by Honorable Naisura Resoda on the skin and heights and leather. You need not to go further, and I'll ensure that I dispatch a copy of the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto to Honorable Naisura or any other member who would be interested, because we are very, very loud on the issue of skin and height. I was involved in a lot of economic forums which gave us to this manifesto. Our people are very clear, and I think I want to somehow, I don't want to blame them, but one of the members here, the honorable member for Kikuyu, his constituency is the one which created a culture of throwing away skin so for them they were only interested in the meat. So we need to have a new center of excellence away from Dagoretti and Kikuyu to know that skin and hide is not for just throwing away. Because now our culture is, after you finish with the meat, that the skin, meat and that the rest of it appears as waste. There is very huge potential, and we can really.
Chair, now that the CS nominee has mentioned that issue of hides and skins, maybe it's one of the issues he needs to look into, because it is not the people that chose the culture of throwing away hides and skins. It's actually government policy that has driven them from throwing away the hides and skins. Because a hide that was trading at almost 800-900 shillings today is trading at about 80 shillings.
Yeah.
So the challenge actually is on you, if approved, to make sure that you take back the trade of hides and skins. And also opportunities, as you are saying, in the region. What happened is that people can no longer export raw hides and skins. And maybe, Chair, if you allow me, as a further question, now that you have brought in that issue, it is the same issue that we have with edible oils. Big manufacturers and big traders basically sit using the ministry, especially using the East African tariffs, to kill competition. I think if you look at the issue without mentioning particular companies in the country, the question of edible oils, There are traders who are importing edible oils into this country, but certain huge manufacturers, and I'm sorry to say so, but mostly of the Asian descent, have used their leverage. Importers and small traders are not able to import. And the Honorable Junet, if he was still here, he would tell you, because we were sharing with him earlier, people now can't import edible oils. It's the same thing that happened to the trade with hides and skins. A few people came together, influenced government policy, and killed the business of very many people in Kikuyu, Dagoretti, in Ruai here in Nairobi, in Naivasha, in Mariral, and all the other abattoirs that you know that I know.
Chair, thank you very much, through the Chair. I want to assure the Honourable Member for Kikuyu and the Honourable Member for Samburu West, I will ensure that there is good money for hide and skin. So you can tell your constituents not to throw them away. In any case, our people are very hardworking. You don't even need to tell them. As soon as we improve the market, we are setting up the leather, some leather zone somewhere within the river. Land has been set aside, and I have also some proposals from northern Kenya for hide and skin. Hide and skin is going to be one of the most sought after commodity, and so I think that this is going to open a completely new business there. I hear you on the issue of edible oils. I have had through the outgoing cabinet secretary for trade and industry. 2 weeks ago there was an issue of where some edible oils were condemned. So I requested her that I want to familiarize myself with the issues of crude oil, of edible oils, and I asked her, please bring me the manufacturers. And we had this meeting in her office, and I was expecting to find a full boardroom. There were 6. And I said, was it boycott? I said, no, these are the only people. So I am sense of that matter, and I want to assure you that the issue of micro manufacturing, giving even that Gekambura guy who would want to be in this business, I have had discussion with our ambassador in Malaysia about how can we be able to streamline the availability of CPO, crude palm oil from Malaysia, which is giving these big manufacturers an advantage for also the household manufacturer. But again, that's why again we come to the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. There is more CPO, crude palm oil, in Africa than in Malaysia. And as we sell them our tea, as we sell them our coffee, as we sell them our horticulture, avocados and all others, we are going also to explore the possibility of these household manufacturers being able to access crude palm oil from within Africa. One thing associated with this, because now Honorable Naisura, I know I wanted to preempt her because I had come prepared for her, but she missed the question. So because I had done enough study on it, so let me just say, so that it doesn't go to waste. On the issue of Shanga, for the pastoralist community, I've had discussion with the Shanga initiative, which is currently in the office of the president, and it is my intention to place Shanga pari passu with all other exports, even giving them space within our EPZ, so that this industry is employing a lot of people, especially women, within Samburu, within Narok, Kajiado, and all other areas. So Shanga is now going to be in the list of exportable. It's already in the list of AGOA. So if I'm approved by this house, I'll ensure that we work with the pastoralist areas, not only for the leather, hide and skins, but also for promoting Shanga as a source of income. Honorable Kekalia has asked a question on investment. Why we have found it necessary, His Excellency the President has found it necessary to include investment. Indeed, investment in this country has been an offer. Most of the functions have been hidden somewhere within the national treasury. And because of that, it has a lower priority. Well, because treasury has got burning issues of managing our debt, that's a full-time job, of our macroeconomic stability, that's a full-time job, of balancing our exchequer within the difficult conditions which we are going through, of managing our budget. And so therefore, investment had been relegated to the back burner of the national treasury priorities for investment, so that we can be able to give a full, completely new focus on alternative means of financing our development, focusing on the PPPs, focusing on FDIs, giving conditions that are conducive for domestic investment, converting Nairobi into an emerging financial center like the way we have got Dubai, Hong Kong and all that. So the whole focus of non-budget financing is why we have now included investment as a very serious agenda within the Ministry of the former Minister of Trade and Industry. And indeed what you're going to find out, because we have got so many investors walking around here saying, I want to invest in this, I want to set up this, but nobody was there to give them attention. So because of this new focus, we are going to ensure that we take investment back to where we are. Now, on the issue of question by Honorable Stephen Mule about our competitiveness. First of all, let me address this issue of GSK because yes, the business environment for manufacturing is hostile, it's not conducive. But also, let us also separate fact from other stories, because GSK had two arms in Kenya. They had one arm for manufacturing and the other arm for trading in pharmaceuticals. What they have done, the trading one, which is not about manufacturing, they have it is the one that they have relocated. So we really lose nothing, because they are not doing manufacturing, they are doing trading. The one they were doing manufacturing, it still exists. They have given it to a franchisee, and that is happening. Am I saying that we don't have a problem of business development for manufacturing? No. Am I saying that we need not to look at our tax regime, our cost of power, and all those other factors which are frustrating our local manufacturing? No. But I'm also saying that sometimes what appears as a problem is not a problem, and some of it is lack of information. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, I want to add on what Honorable Kuria has said. Honorable Kuria, we have a problem of manufacturing. If you go to industry area, most godowns are closed down, about 348. So there's a problem and we need to address that.
Chair, I would want to ask Honorable Mukami, because he's a long-standing member of the Trade Committee, to ask all those who have gone back, tell them the sheriff is here, come back. Thank you.
Speaker, just one clarification from Moses. Probably, Moses, you didn't get me well on the issue of the VAT and like the petroleum products that are requested. My concern is very simple. The taxman is very happy today to complete the cycle of his target. But what is the implication of that collection of the tax from Kenyan vis-a-vis our affecting our export and our import to enhance trade? If I'm clear.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. Indeed, Honorable Mule, the Kenya Kwanza government and the President are taking steps in this direction. As you know, the first thing that the President did upon being sworn in is to do away with the fuel subsidies, so that we can have a more market-driven dynamics within the fuel sector. So this is painful to Kenyans, but it came with one thing, which is very good. We are just waiting for Parliament, for committees to be constituted, so that we can bring our initial amendment. Part of that is a PDL, the Petroleum Development Levy. Now that we have gone to the floating market of petroleum, that will be the first one to go. We are also going to look, with the consultation with the Parliament, to some of the other levies, not talking about levies. Let me address the issue of railway development levy. The problem with these issues is that they are also integrated with other issues. We know very well that this is a ring-fenced levy which is going to financing the SGR. That is why it is very important that we all ensure that SGR becomes profitable by itself, so that within the fullness of time we can be able to do away with this levy. If Parliament coming to the RMLF, the Roads Maintenance Levy, if Parliament in its wisdom decides to donate the money that we give for 10% and 22%, then maybe we can look at at this particular. But of course, you know, that will create other problems for the people of Matunguru, and I'm sure they're not going to like that. So it's a continuous process. We are going to have a continuous engagement. Yes, we need to look at the issue of taxation. We need to broaden the tax base so that we don't overburden one particular sector with taxes. Why today petroleum is a target for the taxman all the time is because of our narrow tax base. But if I am approved as a minister in charge of trade, I am going to sit down with our traders and manufacturers and ask as many people to pay taxes so that we share this burden evenly and stop overburdening some sectors like petroleum. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. You have had your bite. Yes, Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Maybe Moses, just a quick one, is the African Free Trade Area. And the greatest concern, even when we were in EU ACP, is the issue of borders. You talk with a lot of confidence on that. What gives you that confidence? Because it is a greatest concern.
I think I almost missed Honorable what he's saying is that I did not answer his question. But yes, I apologize because you had asked that question. Let me address Ethiopia. Because in the discussion that the President had with the Prime Minister Abiy 2 weeks ago, the issue of Moyale border post arose. And I would want to assure you that a committee is already formed and in place addressing all the concerns from a custom point of view, from a security point of view. We are going to address all those issues and we are going to reopen the Moyale border post within the shortest time possible. During the Uganda National Day celebration, for those who may have missed the President's speech, he said categorically, and that's the position of the Kenya Kwanza government, that we do not want to see a one-stop border. We want to see a zero-stop border. So that is a commitment of the government of Kenya going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Moses. You have very romantic ideas about trade, and it's a good idea. Now, going forward, I would encourage you, one, to address with other agencies, because your minister alone will not do all you are saying.
Yes.
The ease of doing business in Kenya, the cost of energy, the agricultural sector that is key to your success. But above all, we belong to the East African community. I belong to the school of thought that Kenya should never be worried about products from Uganda or Tanzania because we sell much more to them than they will ever sell to us in the near future. The best is to harmonize the free movement of goods and services within the region. Thirdly, in this country, we have been psyched to believe that an investor must be a foreigner. We have a lot of local investors who can move from Mombasa and invest in Samburu, from Samburu invest in Moyale, Moyale invest in Kikuyu. You need also to encourage our local investors. Avail them cheap credit. When people come in from other jurisdictions, they come in with loans that are concessional, that are very cheap from their countries. How do you leverage on our local banking system to help finance local investors? AGOA is a very sorry state for us. I would encourage you to fight through the AU because it was an African initiative. Donald Trump set on a mission to kill it for reasons that you know. Go to the AU through the trade committees, fight to reinstate AGOA. But over and above that, you will get to know that Bangladesh alone sells apparels to America more than the whole of Africa put together. Bangladesh, a very poor country. If we can be able to upscale our manufacturing, because duty-free access to one of the biggest markets in the world. Fight to retain it, upscale our production. Beet cotton is here. How do we leverage on helping the farmers to grow more cotton? I know that may not be a docket. Last but not least, Kenya must fight to retain our competitiveness. There's a question here which we framed for you which has not been asked. Why are companies leaving Kenya to go and manufacture in Egypt and sell back? Colgate left. There are many others that have... which ones? Glaxo, SmithKline Beecham, Wrigley's, all these, even butter now, Kenya is a trading post. There's very little manufacturing. How do we lure them back? Encourage them to manufacture in Kenya so that we can be able to create jobs, create wealth. You have your job cut for you. You have your know-it-all. You have impressed me, at least I must say so. If you can translate what you are saying into action, then you will be able to create a difference. We have had ministers in that docket who talk as much as you did and did very little. Please try and do what you say and say what you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yes. Chair, if I may just comment on the issues of ease of doing business. Indeed, it is a big concern, and I expect to do exactly what you've just said. Work within my colleagues within government. An issue may be with energy, an issue may be with agriculture, an issue may be with another ministry, but my customer is the manufacturer and the trader. So the buck stops with me, and it's up to me to create that synergy within cabinet and within the other sectors, so that I'm the advocate for, irrespective of where the issue lies, and as well my colleagues within ESC and the region. A very important issue you mentioned about domestic investors, and my intention, if I'm approved by this House, is to really have all inquiries on all issues by investors within the Kenya Investment Authority, be they domestic and be they, or investors or foreign investors. I know there has been that perception that investors need necessarily be foreigners. No, even local investors need to be treated well. What is lacking is that special focus on an investor as somebody with a choice. Investors have choices, but the mindset before has been that investor has got no choices, that the investor needs Kenya more than Kenya needs the investor. I intend to reverse that and ensure that we place the investor out of it. Why are companies leaving? Companies are leaving because our cost is high. Our cost as energy is high. Our taxation is not assisting. That is in terms of cost, but also because of, sorry to say this, but I don't care attitude. In other countries, there's a principle called too big to fail, that any company having employed people is too big to be left to itself to decide whether it succeeds or it fails. It is a business of government. You saw during the financial crisis in the US, governments taking over companies instead of them failing, because they're saying, fine, okay, you have failed as a business, but what about the jobs? What about the taxes? So I intend to ensure that every business, before closing, they are free and open to come and have a cup of tea with me and ask ourselves, how can we as government be able to help that company from failing, so that we don't lose jobs and we don't lose taxes. You should have mentioned, Chair, Bangladesh, bigger than all of Africa. The textile industry alone employs 6 million people. If I was to just achieve just half of that dream, and put 3 million Kenyans in textile jobs in this country, from the entire value chain, from cotton in Eregeo Marakwet to the AGOA exporting EPZs, I will deem myself very successful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any member with anything? I think we'll now give you your last 3 minutes to tell us your wish and expectation from this committee.
Thank you, Chair.
Before you do that, when you finish, you see our legal officer, the lady in blue there. She'll see you as you go out. There's a letter that she requires you to respond to 1 or 2 things.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Chair, let me just say I've got the passion. And I am a practical person. I may sound with a lot of English, but I'm a very practical person. And I approach things from the mindset of an entrepreneur. So what I will bring to this ministry, if I am approved, is one is practical, tested pair of hands. I have got experience locally and international. I have got networks within many countries. I have got networks within this country. I've got a lot of networks among leaders, members of parliament. I understand where we are exactly, the needs of our people, and I am able to connect the dots. I know this ministry has had a lot of what we call kizungumingi in the past. I intend to be different. I intend to talk less because I am exiting from being a politician to being a technocrat. I want to put it that I've had enough of talking. And going forward, you'll see more action and less talk of me. And it's not a loss because in this parliament, I have groomed over 45 members, especially the new members who have just been elected, who have passed my hands in terms of grooming and tutelage. So I will leave the politics to them, focus on my job, work with manufacturers, work with the investors, both domestic and foreign, and really get things done. There's nothing I enjoy, Chair, than getting things done, working on results, solving problems, focusing on the issues, and really believing that we can do it. Finally, Chair, is on the whole issue of where are we going to get the money to drive this country forward. There's the leg room in our fiscal space, and I was in this house throughout my tenure until when I was rather unfairly removed. I was a member of the budget committee for 8 years. So I am very conversant with our fiscal situation. We are not in very good times. I am very much conversant of our debt situation, our debt servicing situation. We cannot continue to depend on fiscal measures, on budget, on spending to drive this country forward. It is time to focus on policy. It's time to focus on investment. It is my intention that I would want to see a situation whereby I match 2 for 1. For every shilling that you spend through the exchequer, I generate 2 shillings from non-balance sheet efforts like investment and public-private partnerships and generally enabling jobs to be created through other means other than spending. So we have agreed with my colleague, if he's approved, Professor Ndung'u, that he will continue to take care of that one Kenya which has got debt, fiscal deficit, efficient civil service, to the other Kenya which I want to spearhead, of where we don't depend on debts, on budgets, on deficit, but Kenya driven by investment and opportunities. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Moses Kuria. We are now come to the end of our discourse with you, and you are at liberty to go and carry out your other duties.
Thank you, Chair.
Subject to talking to the clerk wants some documentation from you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you,
members.
members.
Can I usher out the Honorable Kuria? Honorable members, I think this will be the right time to stop and adjourn our business today. Tomorrow we resume at 8:30 like we did today. We have yet another 5 nominees to deal with. We want to ask the sergeant that we'll leave our files here like we did yesterday. Ensure the security and safety, and may you have a good evening. I wish I had done Saturday to remember Monday.
afande.